Warrior Lore. Chapter 2805. That miraculous long saber, bloody slaughter, left a deep impression on people. Otherwise, with the help of the demonic dragon ancestor, those humans would not have been able to escape death no matter how powerful they were. Therefore, even though the living beings of this world rarely mention what happened back then, to the immortal realm experts who participated in that conflict, none of them could forget it. Not only was it a great experience, but it was also the shame of the entire Qian Su Jinghua heaven. At this moment, seeing Du Xiaofu in the void passage, the old man of the heaven-devouring demonic wolf clan could not help but have a violent and ruthless feeling in his heart. What a powerful boy! We haven't seen each other for only a few decades, but your cultivation has improved so much. But this time, you have nowhere to run. The old man's lips curled into a sinister smile. After laughing ferociously, he turned his head and flew straight towards Du Xiaofu. Since he had seen this boy, there was no reason for him to let him go. As long as he succeeded in killing him, he would be able to make a great contribution in front of the Taisher Demon Dragon clan and the other two clans. Someone is coming. Du Xiaofu, who was traveling through the void passage, suddenly felt his eyelids twitch. He spread out the power of his primordial spirit and found that a figure was rapidly coming towards him. This time, he planned to return to the supreme Changrong heaven directly. He did not stay in the Qian Su Jinghua heaven, so he did not use the disguised divine technique. Under normal circumstances, he should have reached the location of the wormhole smoothly and then left directly. In fact, if he used the Fuyao style with all his strength to travel continuously, it would only take him about half a day to reach the wormhole. But who would have thought that his whereabouts would be discovered by someone, and that person seemed to be rushing towards him for some reason? He's an expert. Otherwise, he wouldn't have discovered me before I did. Du Xiaofu narrowed his eyes and made such a judgment in his heart. Since this person was able to discover him and directly rush towards him, this person's strength was definitely above his. It was very likely that he was an immortal realm expert. Brat, you even dare to show up in the Qian Su Jinghua heaven. You've got guts. While Du Xiaofu was deep in thought, the old man's roar rang out. Along with this, a vast wave of energy surged through the sky, shattering the void as it pressed down on Du Xiaofu. Immortal realm. Du Xiaofu's eyes twitched a few times. He was shocked by the old man's strength. Just as he had expected, the old man who had rushed over was an immortal realm expert. Even from such a distance, Du Xiaofu could feel the terrifying aura emanating from the other party's body, causing one's heart to tremble. However, he had now reached the peak of the late stage of the truth-severing stage, and his attainments in the laws of space and the laws of matter were even more profound. After merely circulating the power of the laws in his body, he was able to resist all of this. Du Xiaofu, let's see where you can run to today. Give me your life. The old man yelled as he rushed forward at full speed. The endless distance was quickly swept under his feet. In just a few breaths' time, his face was clearly seen by Du Xiaofu. Damn it, I was actually discovered by an immortal realm expert. Du Xiaofu cursed inwardly. Without thinking, he directly used his fastest speed to rush in the direction of the wormhole. Obviously, that old man knew him. He was definitely one of the many experts who had besieged his group. Facing such an immortal realm expert, it would be really dangerous if he didn't run away. Although his cultivation had improved greatly, and he was confident in facing an ordinary immortal realm expert, it should be known that this was the Qian Su Jinghua heaven. If the news spread out, it wouldn't take long for more people to rush over. At that time, he could only face a situation where there was no road to heaven and no door to hell. He would be chased to death no matter where he went. With this understanding, Du Xiaofu moved with all his might. He only wanted to reach the wormhole as soon as possible. Once he entered it, he would be absolutely safe. Brat, you still want to run? Today you must die. I admit that you're extraordinary. You've reached the peak of the late stage of true severing realm so quickly, but I'm at the first sky of immortal realm. If I want to kill you, it'll be as easy as turning my hand. The old man shouted loudly. His whole body emitted a strong murderous intent. Using his immortal realm cultivation base, he was like chasing stars and chasing the moon. He followed Du Xiaofu from afar and didn't fall behind at all. Damn it, my cultivation base is still not enough. I can't get rid of him. Du Xiaofu cursed. His cultivation base burst out to the extreme. Using the Fuyao style and the space principle, he had already reached the limit of speed. Even so, he still couldn't get rid of the old man behind him. The gap between the true severing realm and the immortal realm was really huge. Little bastard, weren't you very powerful in the Qian Su Jinghua heaven that year? You even ate an immortal realm expert of my sky-swallowing demonic wolf clan. If you have guts, don't run. Let me tear you to pieces to avenge the humiliation of that year. Behind him, the old man's voice came with a cold smile. This young man was a must-kill target. The Taisher demonic dragon clan saw him as a thorn in their side. Back then, he even killed an expert of his clan and ate his flesh. This made the old man want to kill him no matter what. What sky-swallowing demonic wolf? You're just an old dog. If you have the ability, catch me first. Don't let me kill you too. I swear I'll eat you up. Du Xiaofu turned around and cursed as he continued to move forward at high speed. He had the space principle. Although his cultivation base was not as good as the old man's, his speed was not slower than the old man's. In this way, as long as he successfully escaped to the position of the wormhole, he could escape smoothly. However, just after Du Xiaofu finished cursing, his eyelids suddenly twitched. As if he thought of something fun, the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. Little bastard, no matter how good your mouth is, you can't escape death today. Hearing Du Xiaofu call him an old dog, the old man got angry at once. At the same time, he was also a little anxious. With his immortal realm cultivation base, he actually could not catch up with the young man. However, he did not care too much about this. That Du Xiaofu must have consumed a lot of energy to move so fast. When he lost more than half of his power, his speed would definitely drop greatly. At that time, it would be easy to capture and kill him. Thinking of this, the old man laughed ferociously. No matter what, this young man must die today. Old dog, if you have the ability, catch me first and then talk big. Du Xiaofu spat, and then he didn't waste his breath on Chun Shi any longer and just ran for his life. Both of them exerted their speed to the limit and flew in the Qian Su Jinghua heaven. After less than half a day, the two of them were getting closer and closer to the position of the wormhole. They were only less than 100,000 li away from it. For an immortal realm expert, such a distance could be covered in a very short time. At this time, the old man finally became more and more anxious. If he still could not stop Du Xiaofu, that young man might really escape again. He was a little angry and blamed himself for underestimating that young man's endurance. I hope it's not too late to send a message to the clan now. The old man thought for a while. Then, he used the unique method of the heaven-devouring demonic wolf clan to send the message of Du Xiaofu's appearance out, in order to contact the nearby beast clans and start a hunt. However, just when the old man finished doing this, his eyes suddenly twitched. Then, a great surprise surged up in his heart. Finally, he can't hold on anymore? The old man found that Du Xiaofu's speed started to slow down gradually. He was no longer as fast as before. Such a scene made him feel surprised for no reason. As long as that young man slowed down, it would be easy for him to capture and kill him. After all, the gap between the true severing realm and the immortal realm was like a natural chasm. Killing the other party was just a little bit more effort than killing an ant. Du Xiaofu, you have nowhere to run. The old man shouted. He increased his speed again and chased after him. You old dog, you're really haunting me like a ghost. Du Xiaofu gritted his teeth and cursed. However, he was a little happy in his heart. It was not because his endurance had been exhausted to the limit. It should be known that he had profound attainments in both the space law and the matter law. This distance was simply not enough for him to consume too much energy. The reason why he slowed down was that Du Xiaofu deliberately. He wanted the old man to catch up with him near the wormhole. His plan was simple. His cultivation base had broken through, but he still needed to find someone to test his strength. And this first sky of immortal realm old man in front of him was a suitable candidate. As Du Xiaofu was talking, his body suddenly stopped in midair. He walked out of the space tunnel and faced the old man of the sky-swallowing demonic wolf clan. Little bastard, aren't you good at running away? Why don't you run? The old man sneered. With a swish, he came in front of Du Xiaofu and stood face to face with him. He said, I have to say that you're really bold. You dare to show up in my Qian Su Jinghua sky, and in front of an immortal realm expert, you didn't continue to run away. Instead, you stopped. You're simply courting death. Boundless joy rose in his heart. He looked at Du Xiaofu and sneered. This kid's behavior was absolutely courting death. However, after thinking for a while, the old man felt relieved. Presumably, Du Xiaofu knew that he couldn't run away, so he just faced him directly. Old dog, do you really think that you can defeat me? Du Xiaofu curled the corners of his mouth, looking at the old man. Mwahaha, little bastard, you're still talking nonsense at this moment. If you want to die, how can I not help you? These words came out of the old man's mouth. As he spoke, he suddenly raised his palm and slammed it towards Du Xiaofu. As soon as his palm struck out, the sky and earth seemed to boil up. Tens of thousands of powers of principles intertwined, creating a terrifying energy-light curtain. It was like a majestic city wall, pressing down on Du Xiaofu. A large area of the void was crushed into pieces, and a portion of it was directly crushed into powder and turned into chaos. For the time being, the entire sky and earth seemed to be affected, shaking unceasingly. The power of the immortal realm expert is really intimidating. Du Xiaofu's eyes trembled. Looking at the old man's attack, his eyes were filled with shock. It wasn't the first time he came into contact with an immortal realm expert, but it was the first time he faced such an existence head-on. When he saw the overwhelming power of the immortal realm expert, his whole body was trembling. The pressure on his body was transmitted to his feet, causing the void to collapse. Thud, thud, thud. A series of subtle sounds reverberated. Du Xiaofu's body burst open, and purple-gold blood spurted out. The immortal Xin body couldn't withstand the aura of an immortal realm expert, and cracks appeared on it. At the same time, Du Xiaofu's primordial spirit was also shaking. His whole body was greatly shaken. However, this was only the aura. It wasn't a real attack. Little bastard, give me your life. Kill. The old man let out a loud roar, like a wolf howling, breaking the void. He pushed out a palm, and it was as if he was pushing a side of the world. The mighty power was vigorous, and it pressed down. Seeing Du Xiaofu standing there, the old man was very happy. Under his full power, a true severing realm expert definitely didn't have the power to resist. Facing such a terrifying attack, Du Xiaofu suddenly roared from his throat, and an earth-shaking dragon roar erupted. Without thinking, he directly used the second transformation of the blue spirit armor, transforming into the body of the blue dragon. The gigantic dragon body twisted in the void, turning the heavens and earth upside down. Terrifying energy fluctuations poured out, and the earth and mountains below disappeared in large swaths, turning into dust. The old man's terrifying aura in front of him was also whipped by Du Xiaofu's dragon tail, and it cracked. Huh. The old man couldn't help but be surprised by Du Xiaofu's strength. That kid's methods were really extraordinary. He actually transformed into the body of the blue dragon, and when the aftershock of his attack swept over, it was also shattered. This kind of strength was far from what an ordinary late-stage true severing realm expert could do. So what if you transform into the body of the blue dragon? You can't escape death in the end. The old man grinned maliciously and continued to push his palm forward. The light curtain, which was like a majestic city wall, flew out in a row, emitting a loud rumble. In an instant, it had arrived in front of Du Xiaofu. Purple lightning profound cauldron, come out. Du Xiaofu let out a loud roar when he felt the incomparably oppressive force. Then, 9 black shadows flew out from his dragon body, transforming into 9 huge divine lightning cauldrons, and directly met the old man's attack. Rumble. The 9 cauldrons moved the sky, domineering in the world. The 9 unparalleled heavy weapons released a mighty power that suppressed heaven and earth, blocking in front of Du Xiaofu and colliding with the terrifying light screen. Dong, dong, dong. A series of terrifying loud sounds spread out, and heaven and earth shook. The muffled sound waves spread out, and the blue sky was collapsing. The thick earth was tumbling, and the void was exploding. The surrounding tens of thousands of miles were stirred up as if they had encountered the end of the world, and it was a complete mess. And even though Du Xiaofu had the second transformation of the blue spirit armor protecting him, his primordial spirit also suffered an unimaginable shock, and a large mouthful of purple-gold blood sprayed out from his dragon mouth. His entire body was not lightly injured. In the end, he once again endured the shock on his body, and with a few swings of his dragon tail, the remaining energy was crushed into nothingness. Human kid, you really overestimate yourself. You actually want to fight against an immortal realm expert with the cultivation of true severing realm. The old man of the heaven, devouring demonic wolf clan, laughed sinisterly, looking at Du Xiaofu as he spoke. Although he said so, he couldn't help but be shocked by the strength of this human youth. In the entire 33 heavens, how many people in the true severing realm could withstand his current attack? But Du Xiaofu did it, so how could he not feel incredulous? It seems that I still overestimated myself a little. After Du Xiaofu swept away all the remaining energy waves, he performed the first move of Fuyao and retreated to the distant sky, widening the distance between him and the old man. He murmured with a somewhat bitter smile. He originally thought that after breaking through, he should be able to fight against an immortal realm expert, but now it seemed that he still overestimated himself a little. If it weren't for the blue spirit armor and the purple thunder profound cauldron, he was afraid that the blow just now could have directly turned him into ashes, and the best result would have been serious injuries and dying. The immortal realm was really too terrifying. Kid, you can take a blow from an immortal realm expert, even if you die without a burial place. You should be proud of yourself. The old man of the sky-swallowing demonic wolf clan said with a gloomy smile, and then he suddenly snorted coldly, saying, "In my Qian Su Jinghua heaven, you acted recklessly and preyed on the experts of my sky-swallowing demonic wolf clan. Human, your death is not to be regretted. Today, I will use your life to avenge the people of my clan who died, and to wipe away the disgrace of the many experts of my Qian Su Jinghua heaven." He hated Du Xiaofu very much in his heart, and only wanted to kill him as soon as possible. Most importantly, judging from the killing intent of the Taisher demonic dragon, the green blood giant, and the divine netherworld clan towards Du Xiaofu, he would definitely be able to obtain a lot of benefits after killing him this time. Just thinking about this made the old man's blood boil. The benefits given by the 3 strongest clans would definitely be generous. Kill. The old man thought in his heart, and once again let out a deep shout. He raised his palm again and slapped towards Du Xiaofu. The magnificent power of laws intertwined with each other, driving the entire void to move. The vast power swept across the void, forming a world-destroying storm. In the center of this storm, there was a mysterious power as deep as an abyss flowing, trying to strangle the purple-robed young man in front of him into nothingness. I don't believe that you, a first sky of a mortal realm expert, can really kill me. Facing the old man's attack again, Du Xiaofu's face suddenly became ferocious. An unyielding spirit rose from the bottom of his heart. He wanted to fight this immortal realm expert of the sky-swallowing demonic wolf clan to find out his specific level at this time. Moreover, if he really couldn't beat him, he still had a chance to continue to escape. Void 8 diagrams, rise for me. Du Xiaofu didn't hesitate anymore. The words that came out of his mouth were like a muffled thunder, shaking the void. Chapter 2806. Walala. When Du Xiaofu finished speaking, a huge 8 trigrams appeared out of thin air, entrenched in the void as if it was real. It looked as if it was created by supreme laws and was engraved between the heavens and earth. An enormous pressure that caused one's scalp to go numb descended and fiercely suppressed the sky. In the middle of the 8 trigrams in the void, the laws of matter seethed. Various phenomena appeared within it and evolved into all things. At the same time, Du Xiaofu's domineering domain spread out and covered an area of thousands of miles. Everything was tightly bound. The law of space and the law of matter intertwined with each other. Accompanied by a domineering aura, It charged toward the elder of the sky-swallowing demonic wolf clan. To think that someone in the truth-severing tier could actually display such terrifying strength. The old man was shocked by Du Xiaofu's methods, especially the 8 trigrams hovering in the sky. Although he was at first sky of a mortal realm, he couldn't help but shiver in fear. That terrifying pressure was all-pervasive, suppressing the old man's primordial spirit, causing his heart to tremble. All of a sudden, the void 8 trigrams collided fiercely with the destructive storm unleashed by the old man. Boom, boom, boom. A huge explosion resounded, and the entire world was filled with this sound. Every inch of space instantly exploded and turned into a chaotic zone. The laws of space and matter carried by the void 8 trigrams instantly exploded, turning into a large number of runes that spun and shot out in the void. At the same time, the energy storm that the old man had unleashed had been blasted into pieces and no longer possessed any lethality. When the two completely different energies collided, the result was almost a tie. Such a scene greatly surprised the old man. Little bastard, you really have some tricks up your sleeve. But do you really think that this old man can't do anything to you? The elder of the sky-devouring demonic wolf clan stared at Du Xiaofu and said gloomily, no matter what, as an expert at first sky of a mortal realm, he couldn't lose his cool in front of a junior at the true severing realm. Moreover, he hadn't used his full strength in that strike earlier. Therefore, the old man believed that as long as he exerted his full strength, he would be able to crush the purple-robed young man in front of him. No matter how ferocious the purple-robed young man's void 8 trigrams technique was, it was absolutely impossible for the purple-robed young man to resist. Old dog, you really talk a lot of nonsense. Didn't you say you wanted to kill me? But you've already made 2 moves, and I'm still standing here perfectly fine. As an immortal realm expert, could it be that you only know how to talk? Du Xiaofu's pair of dragon eyes stared straight at the old man as he spoke word by word. He was once again shaken by the previous blow, and it was not as easy as it seemed on the surface. After all, the difference in cultivation between the two of them was too great. Fighting with a gap of a whole realm was impossible. However, he was lucky that the 8 diagrams of the void that the master of the 3,000 worlds had taught him was extraordinary. Moreover, with the second transformation of the blue spirit armor, he could resist the first sky of immortal realm experts. If he had the purple lightning profound cauldron, he might really have a chance to win. Good, good, good. If you want to die so badly, how could I disappoint you? The old man of the sky-swallowing demonic wolf clan's voice became gloomy with some murderous aura. He gathered his aura one more time, urging the power of principle. Around him, the principle of matter was like a pot of boiling water, constantly jumping. The invisible power of principle fluctuated, creating visible traces of principles and principles. They turned into lines, shuttling back and forth in the void, interweaving with each other to create a magical track. Swoosh! In an instant, it was as if a world had been born around the old man, and an extremely vast power swept out from within it. Layers of light rose, and everything in the world was created as if they were real. Different from Du Xiaofu's 8 diagrams, the old man's illusory world was created by the complete principle of matter. It gave people a feeling that it was a real world. However, the 8 diagrams of the void was different. Before Du Xiaofu had mastered the complete principle of matter, he could use the principles of mutual promotion and restraint to create thousands of images. Buzz, buzz, buzz. As the world outside the old man's body was created, Du Xiaofu felt a desolate aura rushing toward him, pressing down on him rapidly. That terrifying power crushed down on his body, causing his azure dragon body to tremble. The immortal realm is indeed powerful. However, you're only at the first heavenly layer after all. You've only just integrated the principle of matter. You're still miles away from successfully integrating all the power of principle. Du Xiaofu narrowed his eyes, trying to adjust his body and state to resist the terrible pressure. If we're talking about it, my attainments in the principle of matter are not much worse than yours. The only thing I'm lacking is the realm between truth-severing and immortal realm. While he was thinking, he held up another 8 diagrams. After that, the law of space spread out once more, enveloping the old man and the scene of the world that he had created. Divine thunder cauldron, break. Then, Du Xiaofu shouted loudly, his voice shaking the 9 heavens, breaking the void. The azure dragon body swung its tail in the void and rushed out, moving the 8 diagrams and the absolute dominating domain together. This time, he used the mystical ability of the void 8 trigrams to link the law of matter and the law of space together, causing the space around him to become abnormally terrifying. Heavenly lightning, earthly fire, mountains, rivers, and thousands of elephants all evaporated. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Just as Du Xiaofu shouted, the 9 purple lightning profound cauldrons whistled through the air and brazenly attacked. Like 9 meteors, they charged straight for the old man. You're indeed an extraordinary boy. No wonder the Taisher demonic dragon clan wanted to kill you. If you continue to grow, I'm afraid it'll be difficult to find many people in the 33 heavens who can stop you. Looking at Du Xiaofu rushing toward him, the old man couldn't help but think. The strength of the void 8 trigrams left him shocked once more. In this world, to be able to perfectly connect 2 primal laws together was absolutely a terrifying supernatural art that was rarely seen in the 33 heavens. At the very least, their heaven-devouring demonic wolf clan was far from qualified to have such an ability. Kill. Du Xiaofu didn't waste any more words with the old man. He let out another roar. He just wanted to determine the winner with this old man as soon as possible. After all, this was the Qian Su Jing Hua heaven. If the experts of the other clans were to arrive, he would really be in danger. With the lesson last time, the experts of the beast clan in this world would not let him hide in the desolate ancient space peacefully like they did decades ago, waiting for his master and the others to come with Shuelu. Boy, go to hell. The old man of the heaven-devouring demonic wolf clan roared, a wolf's howl resounding. His old body stood in the center of the world, like a god between heaven and earth. The life and death of the common people were in his hands. Rumble. That world shook. Under the cover of Du Xiaofu's 8 diagrams, a monstrous power was released. The absolute domineering domain was collapsing and being crushed into powder. The space fell into the void piece by piece. Du Xiaofu's heavenly Dharma images evolved from the matter law were also crushed into powder one after another. Under the old man's full-strength attack, his method was still too weak in the end. It was destroyed as easily as crushing dry weeds. And the old man stood in the center of the world, motionless like a mountain, towering like a mountain, outstanding in the world. Although the world around him was greatly damaged, compared to Du Xiaofu, this kind of consumption was too insignificant. Puff, puff, puff. Du Xiaofu spat out purple gold blood from his mouth. His dragon body also burst out with cracks, blood spurting out and dragon scales flying. He gritted his teeth. His dragon eyes turned and gathered all the strength in his body, controlling the 9 purple thunder profound cauldrons to fiercely strike. Huff, huff, huff. The 9 cauldrons carried a terrifying peerless power, cutting through the sky, dragging a long tail of lightning, and bombarding the world outside the old man's body time and time again. Chi. After a collision, a crack finally appeared in that world. Chi. After another collision, the cracks expanded, climbing like a spider web. Chi. 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 After 7 consecutive divine thunder cauldrons fell, the world outside the old man's body finally exploded. It was blasted into pieces of law patterns, flying in the air. What a good treasure! What a good treasure! The old man's body was exposed in the void, but he did not feel the slightest bit of panic. With his cultivation, he did not suffer the slightest bit of injury. He only stared straight at the 9 divine thunder cauldrons that came crashing over again and again, his eyes burning with passion. From the very beginning, the old man had already seen that the 9 cauldrons were extraordinary, and after another round of fighting, he finally realized that these 9 divine thunder cauldrons were definitely supreme treasures. Without reaching the level of a high-grade law true weapon, it was absolutely impossible to destroy his world form with just a few simple bombardments. A high-grade law true weapon or even more. The old man's eyes were filled with greed. For an immortal like him, it was impossible to have such a terrifying treasure. Perhaps only the three great clans like the Tysher Demon Dragon, the Green Blood Giant, and the Netherworld God Clan would have so many high-grade or even supreme-grade law true weapons. For a clan like the Heaven-Devouring Demonic Wolf, it was already a great fortune to have a mid-grade law true weapon. After killing you, these 9 cauldrons will be mine. The old man of the Heaven-Devouring Demonic Wolf clan licked his dry lips, his eyes emitting green light. After he finished speaking, he changed the topic again. No, I can't kill you like this. This old man will capture you alive and search your primordial spirit. This old man will also obtain your 8 trigrams technique. Whether it was the Purple Thunder Cauldron or the Void 8 trigrams, they were both absolutely powerful. The 9 cauldrons were rare treasures, and if he could learn the Void 8 trigrams technique, the old man was confident that he could use it to quickly integrate the laws he cultivated and then reach an even higher level of immortality. Old dog, you're dreaming. Just as the old man was fantasizing happily, Du Xiaofu laughed sinisterly. It was also at this moment that the 8th Divine Thunder Cauldron was already under his control, breaking through the boundless void and brazenly smashing towards the old man. Unfortunately, your cultivation is still too weak. If you were to improve further, this old man is afraid that this old man will really be unable to do anything to you. The old man recovered his senses, looked at Du Xiaofu, and said softly, "From today onwards, everything on you is mine." As he spoke, he slowly stretched out a palm and brazenly slapped out, fiercely slapping the 8th Divine Thunder Cauldron. Clang! A loud sound shook the sky, as if the entire world was about to be torn apart by this terrifying sound wave. The 8th Divine Thunder Cauldron was also casually sent flying by the old man's palm, directly smashing into the void and disappearing into nothingness. Ugh! Du Xiaofu's throat let out a muffled groan as he was injured again, but the corners of his eyes revealed a sinister smile. He did not dare delay, and continued to control the 9th cauldron to smash down. Humph! The old man snorted softly and actually slowly put one hand behind his back, the posture of an expert. His other palm was raised horizontally again and gently slapped out. This palm seemed ordinary, but there was endless mystic energy circulating within it. The nomological patterns intertwined and intertwined, fluctuating with a power that could shake the 9 heavens. Facing the 9th cauldron flying towards him, the old man attacked. Old dog, you're really arrogant. It was also at this moment that Du Xiaofu laughed coldly. He looked at the old man, and with a sudden thought, a mysterious and unfathomable power spread out in the air. Then, he saw the 9th cauldron's speed suddenly increase. Just before the old man's palm landed, it brushed past his palm and fiercely hit his chest. Bang! A muffled sound came from the old man's chest, like a heavy hammer hitting a drum, causing people's ears to go blank. Wah! After being hit by the 9th cauldron, the old man spat out a mouthful of blood. A dent appeared in his chest, and his sternum was shattered. Under the direct impact of the Divine Thunder Cauldron's tyrannical power, even his immortal realm body could not withstand it and was injured. How is this possible? The old man's body flew backward, and at the same time, his eyes could not help but be shocked. The law of time. It's actually the law of time. At that moment, with his strength, he could have directly sent the 9th cauldron flying. But suddenly, the Divine Thunder Cauldron's speed suddenly increased, and it was as if the speed of his palm had slowed down, causing him to be caught off guard and be hit in the chest by a fierce force. He knew that the truth was that it was not that he had slowed down, and it was not that the 9th cauldron had become faster, but that the Divine Thunder Cauldron had been affected by the acceleration of time, which caused him to be careless and be hit. What a powerful kid! The law of space and the law of matter have both reached the late stage of truth severing, and the law of time has also reached the early stage of truth severing. This kid is really extraordinary. If I don't kill him, he will definitely become a big problem in the future. The old man's heart was extremely shocked, and such thoughts came out uncontrollably. That purple-robed human youth was absolutely ordinary. Once he grew up, unless the meditative realm appeared again, no one in this Qian Su Jinghua heaven would be able to control him. Old dog, the taste is not bad, right? The corner of Du Xiaofu's mouth rose into a cold smile. Looking at the old man who was flying backward, he clenched his teeth and his eyes emitted a fierce intent. Then let's do it again. He calculated the distance the old man flew backward, and then with a thought, the law of soul spread out, and a wave of power that made one's primordial spirit palpitate spread out and attacked the old man. On the opposite side, the old man of the heaven-swallowing demonic wolf clan broke the void with one foot and stabilized his body. When Du Xiaofu's law of soul power rushed into his mind, he felt a moment of dizziness, but this feeling of dizziness was quickly dispelled by him. Soul power. The old man was shocked again, but just as he was about to say something, the space behind him suddenly exploded. Rumble. Another divine thunder cauldron suddenly appeared, and with the overbearing power of heaven and earth, it directly smashed the old man's back. Puff! The old man's body was knocked away, and blood spurted out of his mouth again, and his face suddenly became as pale as paper. Little bastard, this old man will tear you apart. After the old man stabilized his body, his eyes glowed with a green light, and they were filled with extreme hatred. If it was in the past, he would never have dared to imagine that he would suffer such a big loss at the hands of a junior at the true severing realm. This was definitely not something that ordinary people could understand. The purple-robed young man's methods were too strange. Who would have thought that the other party actually had such profound attainments in the four primordial laws of time, space, matter, and soul? This was too terrifying. In the 33 heavens, there were probably not many people like this since ancient times. Old dog, haven't you been clamoring to kill me? Oh no, you want to capture me. Take my divine thunder cauldron, search my primordial spirit, and obtain the Void 8 trigrams technique. But you've been shouting for so long, and I'm still standing here alive. Could it be that, as an immortal powerhouse, your words are just farts? Du Xiaofu sneered, and his dragon body slowly rolled in the void, crushing pieces of space until they collapsed. Just now, he used the law of soul to cause the old man to feel dizzy for a moment, and then used a divine thunder cauldron to attack him, causing the old man to be injured again. And that divine thunder cauldron was the one that the old man had sent flying with a palm strike. After that cauldron broke through the void, Du Xiaofu used the power of his primordial spirit to guide it, and finally exploded with a terrifying attack. He had learned this method from Elder Kong. At that time, Elder Kong could directly guide his attack into the void, and then directly appear in front of the blood flame lotus, making it impossible to dodge. As Du Xiaofu's attainments in the law of space became deeper and deeper, this method was already used vividly by him. Although it was far from being as smooth as Elder Kong's, it was already able to catch the opponent off guard and catch them off guard. The facts prove that this method was extremely useful. At the very least, this immortal powerhouse of the heaven-devouring demonic wolf clan had fallen for it and suffered a great loss. After experiencing the successive attacks of 2 divine thunder cauldrons, the old man had already suffered heavy injuries. Even though his life wasn't in any danger, such an accomplishment was sufficient to allow Du Xiaofu to look down upon his peers and make countless geniuses pale in comparison. Chapter 2807. Du Xiaofu, I swear I will tear you into pieces today. But before that, I will search your primordial spirit thoroughly. The old man of the sky-swallowing demonic wolf clan roared, his voice shaking the sky. He was so furious that he was on the verge of going berserk. He had been at the immortal realm for many years, but when had he ever suffered a loss in the hands of a true, severing realm warrior? If news of this spread throughout the 33 heavens, he would become the laughingstock of everyone. As for Du Xiaofu, he would step on his back and his reputation would soar. This kind of situation absolutely could not be tolerated. As long as he killed the purple-robed young man in front of him, he could wash away this humiliation. Old dog, you only know how to bark. Didn't anyone tell you that a man doesn't speak well and a dog doesn't bark well? Du Xiaofu's pair of dragon eyes looked at him with a mocking look as if he really regarded the immortal realm warrior as an old dog. He was provoking him. "Little bastard, I will kill you." The old man was enraged and resentful. He hated that he couldn't tear the purple-robed young man's mouth into pieces to vent his anger. Amidst the furious roar, the old man moved once again. A colorful light rose around his body and gradually evaporated. The power of various laws of matter intertwined and transformed, forming a terrifying void sword that brazenly appeared between heaven and earth. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. As soon as the sharp sword appeared, a terrifying crack appeared between heaven and earth. It was like a deep abyss that connected the sky and the earth. It seemed to cut the whole world into two. It was a terrifying scene. Rumble. Under the old man's control, the void sword suddenly moved, moving with a sharp murderous intent. It slashed down on Du Xiaofu's head. Boundless power pulsed around the sword. Violent winds howled and shattered the void. Mighty power circulated and destroyed the heavens. In an instant, the heavens and the earth were in a mess. The entire area was overshadowed by such a terrifying sword strike. This old dog deserves to be at the immortal realm. Du Xiaofu's eyes flickered as he watched the sword slash down. He wasn't an arrogant person, so he could naturally see the gap between them. If they really fought, he really wasn't a match for that old dog. If this continued, the person who would die in the end would very likely be him. However, it wasn't easy for him to leave now. He could only execute the Void 8 trigrams once more and combine the 4 primordial laws of time, space, matter, and soul that he grasped to form an all-encompassing independent space that met the sword that slashed through the sky. As the Void 8 trigrams spun rapidly, it carried this space with it and brazenly collided with the old man's void sword. Boom, boom, boom. In the deafening roar, all the scenes outside Du Xiaofu's body were instantly cut apart. The connection between the 4 types of laws was broken and scattered. However, the void sword that the old man had slashed out continued to slash down with overwhelming power even though it had consumed a great amount of energy. Divine Thunder Cauldron, go! Du Xiaofu gave a loud shout, and the 9 purple lightning profound cauldrons moved in response, sweeping out through the air. Boom, 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 boom. With 9 consecutive explosions, the 9 cauldrons were knocked away one by one and smashed through the heavens and earth. However, the void sword also exploded under the power of the 9 cauldrons and turned into dust. Du Xiaofu's dragon-shaped body was sent flying. The dragon scales all over his body exploded and blood splattered everywhere. Such a collision was too terrifying. It was far beyond what he could withstand. Even the second transformation of the green spirit armor could hardly withstand it. Fortunately, Du Xiaofu had the immortal Xian body. After the injuries on his body appeared, they were constantly recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. On the other hand, the elder of the sky-swallowing demonic wolf clan had once again suffered a certain degree of injury from the terrifying fragments of law. Although it was not very serious, for an immortal realm elite, to be in such a sorry state when facing a truth-severing realm elite was extremely ironic. I'm not going to play with you, old dog, but one day, I'll skin you, old dog, and stew your bones. I'll have a taste of dog meat. Du Xiaofu shouted. After glancing at the old man of the sky-devouring demonic wolf clan, he twisted his huge azure dragon body and quickly turned around, rushing in the direction of the spatial wormhole. After performing the first form of Fuyao several times in a row, he instantly went hundreds of thousands of miles away. Little bastard, you want to leave just like that? It's not that easy. The old man looked at Du Xiaofu's back and said in a deep voice. His eyes were cold, and the green light was almost tangible. He did not even think about it. When Du Xiaofu turned around, he quickly chased after him. With his cultivation, he was not worried about being left behind by Du Xiaofu. Old dog, not only do you bark fiercely, but your ability to chase people and bite them is also not weak. Du Xiaofu turned his head and saw the old man closely following him. He could not help but grit his teeth and say this. Human brat, you can say all you want. After you die, This old man will tear your mouth apart like a frog's." The old man was full of hatred and tried hard to suppress his temper. Then, he once again gathered boundless majestic power and condensed it into a huge light sword. It stretched across the void and suddenly pierced down, directly attacking Du Xiaofu's azure dragon body. The power of the law of matter was vibrating, and a terrifying gully was directly drawn in the void, which extended all the way to Du Xiaofu's back. Du Xiaofu did not dare to hesitate. He once again summoned the 8 sides of the void and the 9 divine thunder cauldrons to meet such a sword. After a series of rumbling sounds, his body was once again sent flying, and a large amount of blood spurted out. His dragon body kept rolling, and everywhere he passed, the space collapsed and collapsed like a mountain. "Old dog." Du Xiaofu narrowed his eyes and gritted his teeth as he cursed. After successfully using the 2 divine thunder cauldrons to launch a sneak attack, the old man had been on guard and was always on high alert. He had no chance to hurt him again. In this way, Du Xiaofu could only keep his head down and run. If he did not run faster, he would definitely end up in a bad situation. "You can't escape." Seeing Du Xiaofu turn around and run again, the old man of the heaven-swallowing demonic wolf clan yelled eerily. Along with the yell, another wave of attacks swept out, heading straight for Du Xiaofu. "Damn it!" Du Xiaofu cursed. He had no choice but to use his cultivation again to resist, but as expected, he was once again sent flying and injured. The 2 of them, one in front and one behind, chased each other. Again and again, the old man of the heaven-swallowing demonic wolf clan attacked Du Xiaofu with terrifying magical powers. And Du Xiaofu also launched his defense again and again, resisting with all his strength. The old man's cultivation was 1 realm higher than Du Xiaofu's. Whether it was the level of strength or the level of endurance, he had the upper hand. Under his ferocious attacks, Du Xiaofu was beaten until he was bleeding profusely. His whole body was covered in wounds, and blood was gushing out like a fountain. His injuries were getting worse and worse. Even with the immortal Xin body, he was almost unable to withstand it. As a result, when the 2 of them were less than 10,000 miles away from the wormhole, the old man finally caught up to Du Xiaofu. At such a close distance, he only needed to use 1 more attack, and he was not afraid that the kid would not fall. "Die!" the old man yelled. In an instant, he moved and attacked from afar with his palm. The void suddenly boiled. Heaven and earth trembled under this palm, and the surrounding space collapsed. "Goodbye, old dog." However, Du Xiaofu did not use all his strength to resist this time. Instead, he stretched out his hands and tore the void, creating a huge spatial crack. His dragon body flew into it and disappeared. "Still want to run?" The old man's palm hit the spatial crack, but it did not seem to hit Du Xiaofu. This place was too close to the wormhole. If the kid was allowed to cross space again, he might really succeed in escaping. His eyelids twitched. He did not need to think at all. Just before the spatial crack in front of him disappeared, he also jumped into it. However, when the old man's foot just stepped into this pitch-black spatial crack, his heart suddenly jumped. He instinctively felt that something was wrong. "This is not a spatial crack." The old man's heart trembled. He instantly sensed something. Damn it! This is that kid's spatial treasure. That year, he had participated in the encirclement of Du Xiaofu's group. He knew that this human kid had an extraordinary spatial treasure. It was because of this treasure that those 200-plus humans could hide inside the spatial crack under the pursuit of almost half of the immortal realm experts in the entire Qin, Su Jinghua heaven, until the forces behind them came to rescue them. Such an extraordinary item made the old man's heart jump. A spatial treasure that could only be broken by a meditative oblivion expert. It must have something terrifying. He was only at the first sky of a mortal realm. If he entered it, no one knew what would happen. Moreover, when he had just stepped in, he had clearly felt a strong sense of danger in his heart, so the old man did not dare to let his guard down. Retreat. The old man of the sky-swallowing demonic wolf clan didn't think much. He immediately retreated, preparing to fly away from this place. "Old dog, since you're here, come and have a seat. As the owner of this place, I will treat you well." Right at this moment, Du Xiaofu's voice came, drilling into the old man's ears. Along with it, a flow of terrifying power came down, fiercely suppressing half of the old man's body that had just stepped into the desolate ancient space. Du Xiaofu had activated the power of the desolate ancient space. Even an immortal realm expert would have to bow down here. Little bastard, with your strength, don't think that you can trap me, the old man shouted. After all, he was an immortal realm expert. More importantly, he still had half of his body outside. The power of the desolate ancient space couldn't have an absolute effect on him. Under the eruption of his full strength, the invisible force that enveloped his body was like shackles that were being broken. His body struggled to move out of the desolate ancient space little by little. In just a moment, the old man had already broken out of the desolate ancient space by a few inches. Such a scene made Du Xiaofu, who was in the desolate ancient space, anxious. "Stay here," he shouted, and the void 8 trigrams rushed up to the top of his head with a whoosh. The law of time, the law of space, the law of matter, and the law of soul, under the influence of the void 8 trigrams, intertwined with each other, forming a terrifying net that tightly bound the old man's body, pulling him into the desolate ancient space. Divine Thunder Cauldron. "Go for me," Du Xiaofu shouted again, and the 9 purple thunder cauldrons whistled through the air, rushing forward. In the blink of an eye, the 9 cauldrons rushed out of the desolate ancient space, and then suddenly turned back, like 9 meteors, smashing into the old man's back. "Boy, don't think that you can trap me." The old man's throat let out a wolf-like howl, which made people's souls tremble. The old man's strength burst out, and he used all his strength to attack the invisible power wrapping around his body. Boom, boom, boom. Under the bombardment of the void 8 trigrams, the void 8 trigrams trembled, and Du Xiaofu's mind was also affected, and he spat out mouthfuls of blood. But his eyes were red, and he clenched his teeth tightly, not relaxing for even a moment. If he couldn't drag the old man into the desolate ancient space, then he really wouldn't have the strength to escape, and he could only hide in there and not come out. But in this way, he would be surrounded by people in the Qian, Su Jinghua heaven. Even if he sent a message to his master Yu Yuqian now, it would be too late, and that old dog must have already informed the experts of other races. Divine Thunder Cauldrons, kill? Du Xiaofu moved his mind, and the 9 cauldrons roared fiercely, and terrifying purple lightning poured out from the 9 cauldrons, fiercely crashing into the old man. Scram! The old man roared loudly, and he slapped out again and again, blasting the 9 cauldrons away one by one. However, his body, which had struggled a few inches out of the desolate ancient space, was driven by Du Xiaofu's 8 trigrams under the huge impact of the 9 cauldrons. "Old dog, you must die today." Du Xiaofu's eyes widened in anger, and he roared crazily, using all his strength. The power of the desolate ancient space and the void 8 trigrams were all mobilized by him, and all of them suppressed the old man. Layer after layer of law traces flew and evolved. The lightning was striking, the fire was burning, the mountains and rivers were rushing, and the flood was surging. All kinds of scenes came one after another, and even with the old man's cultivation, he could only barely maintain a relative stability under such circumstances. He simply couldn't free himself to deal with these, because the 9 divine thunder cauldrons were like 9 lunatics, controlled by Du Xiaofu's mind. They bombarded him again and again, and then were sent flying by him again and again. But then with a rumbling sound, they were suppressed and killed again. This kind of continuous attack was too terrifying, and it was not something that an ordinary person could withstand. Under such circumstances, the old man's body was hit by the divine thunder cauldrons little by little, and moved into the desolate ancient space. He couldn't imagine, with Du Xiaofu's cultivation, how could he still remain standing after using all his strength? He couldn't understand at all, because his opponent had clearly suffered great injuries before. "Boy, don't think of tricking me." At this time, the old man of the heaven-swallowing demonic wolf clan finally felt fear. His face was red, and he roared desperately. However, Du Xiaofu was really going against him, and he didn't relax at all, and didn't give him any chance to escape. Inexplicable fear rose in the old man's heart, and he was like a fish struggling on the beach with endless fear. He didn't know what he would face if he was dragged into this space treasure, but he knew that it wouldn't be a good ending. Awoo, awoo, awoo. The old man was really anxious. His body changed rapidly, and the heaven-swallowing demon's body appeared. The terrifying wolf howl pierced through the gold and cracked the stone, and went straight into the depths of one's soul. Like a small mountain, his body stood at the entrance of the desolate ancient space. His 4 hooves stepped in the void, and his body surged with rays of light, desperately trying to break free. Such a big dog. It's enough for me to have a good meal. Du Xiaofu's eyes were cold, and he clenched his teeth tightly. While restraining the heaven-swallowing demonic wolf, he also controlled the 9 divine thunder cauldrons to continuously attack from outside the desolate ancient space. The old man's body, under the repeated attacks, moved inch by inch into the desolate ancient space. Finally, at a certain moment, after more than half of the old man's body had entered, Du Xiaofu mobilized all of his strength, and in one move, he suddenly dragged him in. Huff, huff, huff. Du Xiaofu's entire body collapsed to the ground in an instant. He was gasping for breath and was extremely exhausted. Coupled with the terrifying injuries he had suffered, he was about to lose the strength to even stand up. A ray of light flashed on his azure dragon's body, and he transformed into his original human form. He lay on the ground with his arms and legs stretched out. His throat was moving, and his chest was heaving up and down. He couldn't stop gasping. Boy, how dare you trick me? At this time, the old man was also very tired. However, as an immortal realm expert, he still had at least 10 to 20% of his strength left. He looked at Du Xiaofu, who was lying on the ground, and was very angry. The heaven-swallowing demonic wolf's body immediately flew up and went to Du Xiaofu's side. This purple-robed human youth was extremely cunning. He had opened the entrance of the space treasure and made the old man think that he had torn open the space to escape. Without thinking, the old man rushed into the crack. Who knew that he would be tricked into this place in the end? You're the one who tricked me, old dog. Du Xiaofu lay on the ground. He didn't move, but the corners of his mouth curled into a smile. He was very satisfied. Even if you trick me into this place, so what? Now you're an arrow at the end of its flight. You're still at my mercy. The old man's wolf eyes shot out green light, and he looked at Du Xiaofu with a serene look. His huge body stood beside the purple-robed young man, and he directly lifted one of his front paws and stomped down. In an instant, the power of law flowed and rose. It fluctuated with a domineering and ferocious aura, which made the ancient, desolate space shake. You don't even know that you're about to die. I feel sorry for you, Du Xiaofu said lightly. He gently lifted one of his palms and waved it without any fancy moves. Swoosh! The invisible power of the ancient, desolate space was mobilized by him. Suddenly, a strong wind blew out, and it was like a sharp blade cutting through everything. Suddenly, the power of law formed by the old man was torn into pieces by the power of the wind blade. It was broken in an instant. As for Du Xiaofu, he was lying on the ground as if he had lost half of his life. However, he was not injured at all. Such a scene made the old man turn pale with fright. Chapter 2808. Now that you're in my territory, what else do you want to do? Du Xiaofu said mockingly as he looked at the old man's sky-devouring demonic wolf body. Since he had trapped the other party in the ancient desolate space, everything that happened next would be under his control. Here, he was the heavens. He was the master of this space. Even if an immortal realm expert came here, they could only be trampled by him. Unless the old man of the sky-devouring demonic wolf clan had the cultivation of the meditative state, he would have a chance to break through everything here and escape. But obviously, this possibility was just a joke. This space has its own independent rules. The old man of the sky-devouring demonic wolf clan was horrified. He seemed to have lost his soul as his legs went soft, and he stumbled back a few steps. At this point, how could he not see the uniqueness of this space? This was obviously a space with its own independent rules, and everything was in the hands of the purple-robed young man in front of him. This was definitely an item refined by a super expert. It could be said that here, if the other party wanted him to live, he would live. If the other party wanted him to die, he could only die. No wonder. No wonder hundreds of thousands of Immortal Realm experts couldn't find this space rule. So that's why. The old man's expression changed drastically, and the sky-devouring demonic wolf's face was also filled with fear. Everything that happened back then was still fresh in their minds. So many Immortal Realm experts had surrounded and killed more than 200 humans, but they were covered up by this space treasure. In the end, the meditative state ancestor of the Taisher demonic dragon clan came out and found it. Right there, everyone knew that the space rule of this human youth was very powerful. But before today, the old man had never thought that it would be so powerful. This was too terrifying. How was this a space? This was simply a small world with its own rules and order. Here, all the rules were controlled by Du Xiaofu. If he wanted to kill him, it would only take a thought. I said that one day, I'll skin you and stew your bones for a good meal. After a moment of rest, Du Xiaofu finally recovered some strength. He pushed his hands against the ground and stood up shakily. He looked at the sky-swallowing demonic wolf in front of him and said with a grin. Then, he stretched out his hand again and slowly slapped out. At this moment, Du Xiaofu was like a god between the heavens and earth. He possessed supreme power and looked down on all living beings while dominating the universe. His palm was light, but it stirred up the power of the entire desolate ancient space and pressed down on the old man of the heaven-swallowing demonic wolf clan. My life is over. The old man screamed as he felt the aura of death approaching. Facing the boundless mystic energy around him, which was like thousands of mountains collapsing and thousands of waves roaring towards him, he couldn't help but feel terrified, and his body trembled. The old man was stunned. Looking at the monstrous attack, he seemed to be in a daze. For a moment, he actually forgot to resist. When the boundless aura fell on him, he woke up as if he had just woken up from a dream. His throat burst out with an ear-piercing howl. No, his Immortal Realm cultivation base surged. He wanted to resist this terrifying attack, but it was too late. Under Du Xiaofu's control, the unimaginable power of the desolate ancient space destroyed the old man's resistance in just a blink of an eye. Then, the old man's body was pressed down, and he couldn't move anymore. Old man, let me have a taste of your dog meat. Du Xiaofu laughed and pointed at the old man. A light sword appeared in the space, slashing down and cutting off the old man's neck directly. Besides, a fierce light flashed and destroyed the primordial spirit of the sky-swallowing demonic wolf. Shortly, a first Sky of Immortal Realm expert was killed just like that. The giant corpse of the wolf lay on the ground like a small mountain. Before leaving the Qian Su Jing Hua Sky, I can have a good meal again. Du Xiaofu looked at the corpse of the sky-swallowing demonic wolf in front of him, licked his lips and laughed. Then, he didn't think more. He sat down cross-legged on the ground and began to adjust his breathing to heal his wounds. Fighting against the Immortal Realm expert this time, he had received a lot of damage, which was much more serious than he had imagined. When he was fighting in the outside world, he was still okay. At least, under the protection of the Divine Thunder Cauldron and the Void 8 diagrams, he was just shaken violently. Although his wounds were serious, they weren't too deep. He still had the power to run away. Later on, when he dragged the old man into the desolate ancient space, he had used all of his strength. Under the full resistance of the Immortal Realm expert, Du Xiaofu had received an unimaginable shock. His entire body had been consumed to the extreme, and his energy had been overdrawn. In such a desperate fight, no one dared to relax. Otherwise, they would probably die. Thus, in the end, Du Xiaofu was completely exhausted. If that old man had resisted a little longer, or if his cultivation base had been deeper, or if he had resisted more fiercely, Du Xiaofu would have hurt his foundation. He couldn't help but sigh. This time, he was really lucky. It was all because of the old man's carelessness that he had ended up like this. Otherwise, with his peak of the late stage of true severing realm, he couldn't have fought against a first sky of immortal realm expert. At most, he could have escaped. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Du Xiaofu closed his eyes and continued to breathe to heal his wounds. However, less than one day had passed in the desolate ancient space. He opened his eyes, stood up, and cut the corpse of the sky-swallowing demonic wolf. Then, he walked out of the desolate ancient space. It's better to leave this place as soon as possible. If we wait for the powerhouses of the other races to arrive, then we'll really have no way out. Du Xiaofu mumbled to himself, but before I leave, I have to give you guys a big gift. Haha. While he was talking, he dragged a giant wolf leg meat to a mountain ridge. This wolf leg meat was much bigger than his entire body. Soon, a bonfire was burning. Du Xiaofu held the wolf leg meat in his hand, slowly roasting it over the bonfire. Not long after that, the wolf meat glowed with oil. The aroma of the meat spread out with the wind. After I finish eating this wolf leg meat, the other races should be here soon. Du Xiaofu mumbled to himself, calculating the time. The old man of the sky-swallowing demonic wolf clan must have sent the message. He had wasted almost one day in the desolate ancient space, but only a short time had passed in the outside world. He still had enough time to eat his fill. Moreover, he was now less than 100 miles away from the wormhole. He didn't even need to use the Fuyao first form to travel. Even if the enemy came, he could easily retreat. When the meat was cooked and seasoned, Du Xiaofu ate heartily on the spot. He was like a starving child, gnawing on the wolf leg meat. As he ate, he smacked his lips, praising the chewiness of the wolf meat. It was fragrant and delicious. It seems that I'm not full yet. Not long after, the wolf leg meat was eaten clean by him. Du Xiaofu touched his stomach and muttered. Then, the bonfire was set up again. This time, a divine thunder cauldron was used as a big pot. Hot water was boiling inside, cooking a pot of wolf meat and rib soup. After another round of wolfing down the pork rib soup, Du Xiaofu finally burped and happily rubbed his round belly. He even rolled on the ground with a satisfied expression. However, right at this moment, a loud shout shook the earth, tearing the sky. "Human kid, let's see where you can run this time." Hearing that voice, Du Xiaofu quivered. He jumped up from the ground like a carp. "They've caught up with me so fast." Du Xiaofu didn't need to think to know that it was the experts of the other races who had caught up with him after receiving the message. Shortly after, 5 figures walked out of the void, standing in front of Du Xiaofu. These 5 figures all carried with them a wild and tyrannical aura. Law runes faintly circled around their bodies, entangling and tangling together. Obviously, they were 5 immortal realm experts. None of them was weaker than the dead old man of the sky-swallowing demonic wolf clan. They were at least at the first sky of the immortal realm. The creatures of the Qian Su Jing Hua Heaven really think highly of me. As soon as I made a move, those who came out were all at the immortal realm. There wasn't even a true severing realm expert. Du Xiaofu blinked his eyes as he thought to himself, "Du Xiaofu, you still dare to show up in our Qian Su Jing Hua Heaven. You're courting death." Among those who came, an old man who looked around 70 years old looked at Du Xiaofu, pointing at him and saying harshly, "Hey, look." Right after that, another old man of similar age exclaimed in surprise. He suddenly pointed at the bonfire in front of Du Xiaofu. There, a few beast bones lay horizontally. They looked like huge clubs, solid and thick. Pure energy waves were emitting from them. This aura, it's Langji. Langji was killed by him. Shortly, someone found the aura of the bones on the ground. It was from the expert of the sky-swallowing demonic wolf clan. Such a scene caused everyone to be stunned, and they were unable to speak for a long, long time. Dozens of years ago, that human kid was only at the true severing realm. Although his aura had deepened, he hadn't reached the immortal realm yet. But why did the skeleton of the sky-swallowing demonic wolf clan's first sky of immortal realm expert appear here? They couldn't figure it out. They didn't know how it could be like this. Is there someone else hiding in the dark? They couldn't help but be tense as they thought of a possibility. Dozens of years ago, this purple-robed young man had stirred up the Qian Su Jing Hua Heaven. He had many experts with him, and they were all at the immortal realm. If those people were here, their people wouldn't even be enough to fill the gap between their teeth. Seems like there's no one else here. After checking for a while, everybody calmed down a little bit. They didn't find any trace of outsiders. Could it be that this kid has some sort of precious treasure in his possession, or used some sort of trick to successfully kill Lang Ji? It's possible. Look at his aura. Apparently, he was severely wounded. If it's true, he must die today. The 5 experts secretly guessed in their hearts. In the end, they were sure that Du Xiaofu definitely had some kind of peerless treasure on him. After a bloody battle, he was able to kill Lang Ji. Of course, he didn't have the blood gold long saber. Otherwise, even if he couldn't use the full power of the long saber, he couldn't have been wounded that badly. Little bastard, you dared to kill our clan's expert. I will chop you into pieces. Right at this moment, a gray-haired old man in the crowd shouted. He had a pair of green eyes like the dead old man. They were from the same clan, the sky-swallowing demonic wolf clan. When he saw that all that was left of the expert of his clan was a pile of bones, it was obvious that Lang Ji had died and was eaten by that little bastard Du Xiaofu. Looking at his round belly, they knew he had eaten a lot. This made the sky-swallowing demonic wolf clan's expert furious. He swore to kill that purple-robed young man. This kid has gone too far. Last time, he had more than 200 Immortal Realm experts to protect him. This time, he dared to eat our beast clan's expert alone. If these two things are spread out, the creatures of our Jing Hua heaven will become the laughingstock of the whole world. Where did he get the courage to come to our Jing Hua heaven? Not only that, he even dared to eat our beast clan's meat. This human is too arrogant. This human is too arrogant. Kill him. We must kill him. The 5 Immortal Realm experts couldn't restrain their anger. They all shouted. They couldn't imagine that a young man at the true Severing Realm could kill an expert at first sky of Immortal Realm. Moreover, he could enjoy a delicious meal. They had lived for so many years, but they had never seen such an arrogant person. You want to kill me with just you? Listening to their shouts, Du Xiaofu arched his eyebrows and sneered. Be careful. This sky-swallowing demonic wolf is your lesson. In the end, you will also become my food. He looked at the 5 people in front of him provocatively. He gently put the divine thunder cauldron into his chinkuan bag. He didn't look nervous at all. It seemed he had something to rely on. Kid, you're courting death. I want to use your life to take revenge for Lang Ji. This time, let's see how you can escape. Today, you must die. The 5 Immortal Realm experts all shouted. Their words were harsh, and they were indescribably furious. At this moment, the murderous aura from their bodies was earth-shaking, as if they wanted to tear the sky apart. Kill. The sky-swallowing demonic wolf clan's expert shouted. His figure dashed out, taking the lead to attack Du Xiaofu. Kill. The other 4 moved at the same time. Each of them carried with them the power to destroy heaven and earth, shaking the heaven and earth and destroying the void. I'm not going to play with you anymore. However, Du Xiaofu had already made his move just as the experts were about to make their moves. He chuckled. Then, a golden light flashed past where he stood, and he disappeared into thin air. Almost at the same time when Du Xiaofu disappeared, the space was sealed by the power of the Immortal Realm experts. Violent attacks descended like a tsunami, turning the space into a chaotic void. Damn it, he escaped. Du Xiaofu's escape naturally couldn't escape the senses of these people. Chase. Someone shouted. He tore the void and chased after him. In just half a breath's time, the 5 figures arrived at the space wormhole. In front of them, a huge circular wormhole appeared, covering an area of thousands of miles. It was pitch black inside, like a terrifying demon king's huge mouth. It was ferocious, frightening, and emitted a frightening majesty. Pieces of mysterious runes flickered, shuttling back and forth in the void, emitting bright light and releasing a terrifying, vast aura. That part of the void was intertwined in an organized manner, leading to an unknown place. And that purple-robed human youth Du Xiaofu's figure had already disappeared in this wormhole. Damn it, he still escaped. An expert smashed his fist into the void, smashing through the space. A huge black hole appeared, which didn't dissipate for a long time. He was already infuriated to the extreme, and he was extremely vexed because Du Xiaofu had fled. That brat's space techniques are too mysterious and magical. We simply couldn't stop him at such a close distance. An expert's eyes emitted piercingly cold light, and he said word by word. This time, he actually managed to escape. All the major races of our Qin, Su Jinghua Heaven, have lost all face. Who would have thought that brat would dare to come to this world after several decades? And this time, he came alone. His courage is simply too big. Arrogant. Savage. This human is too arrogant, too savage. As long as he doesn't die, he'll be a disgrace to all the creatures in this world. We must kill him. He must die. Only then can we vent the hatred in our hearts. The 5 experts looked at the undulating wormhole, and all of them said hatefully, Du Xiaofu's existence was the stain of all the experts in this world. As long as he existed, all the experts in this world who knew about him would feel as if a bone was stuck in their throats and a thorn in their backs. There was nothing that could make them feel so humiliated. He's already entered the wormhole. We can't catch up. At this moment, an expert calmed down and said slowly, let's propose to the Taisher demon dragon, the green blood giant, and the divine netherworld clan to send people to guard this wormhole. Once that brat appears again, he'll be killed immediately. When this expert finished speaking, his killing intent shot out uncontrollably, surging in the void. Good. Let's do that. If that brat dares to come again, he won't be able to return. He must die. Only then can all the humiliation be erased. Only in the furious curses of the 5 experts, they disappeared from the wormhole one after another. This area quieted down again. Only the wormhole in the sky was still opening its huge, ferocious mouth, as if it was going to swallow someone. Chapter 2809. Translator. H2DH2 Mr. After Du Xiaofu entered the wormhole, he finally let out a long sigh of relief. After all, those were 5 Immortal Realm experts. The pressure they gave him was too great. He was very clear in his heart that if he hadn't run away quickly enough, the other party would have only used a simple spatial lock to make the first form of Fu Yao lose its use. The Primordial Demon Dragon Clan, the Green Blood Giant Clan, and the Divine Underworld Clan. Why do these 3 great clans want to kill me? Du Xiaofu narrowed his eyes as he traveled through the wormhole. Du Xiaofu is not too afraid of most of the creatures in the Qian Su Jinghua Heaven. Presumably, the reason why those people tried so hard to kill him was only because they were hostile to outsiders. On the contrary, it was the 3 strongest clans that had named him and wanted to kill him. This made people think that there must be some secret behind this. In fact, if Du Xiaofu saw the 2 young people who had been to the Taisher demonic dragon clan, he might understand the whole story. It's almost 100 years. Yu Qing Divine Nation, I'm back. Du Xiaofu collected his thoughts and cheered as he flew out of the wormhole. For Du Xiaofu, a few decades of seclusion was already an extremely long time. From the moment he stepped onto the path of cultivation until he arrived at the 33 heavens, it had taken him about the same amount of time. From this, it could be seen that the advancement of this realm was indeed becoming more and more difficult in the future. He couldn't imagine how long he would stay in the immortal realm. Return to the Divine Palace directly. After exiting the wormhole, Du Xiaofu determined the direction and headed towards the Yu Qing Divine Palace. After he had made a breakthrough in the cultivation of the 4 primordial laws, his speed had become even faster. It did not take him too long to enter the Divine Palace. The first thing he had to do was, of course, to pay respects to his master, Yu Qian. As for this cheap master of his, Du Xiaofu had only started to treat him as a close relative after experiencing the crisis decades ago. Not everyone would do their best to help you when you were in trouble. In Du Xiaofu's mind, Yu Qian must have expended a great deal of effort in order to summon bloody slaughter. Master, your disciple is back. After some investigation, Du Xiaofu came to Yu Qian's residence and bowed. Xiaofu is my disciple. Just as Du Xiaofu bent down, a figure appeared in front of him, and a pair of old but powerful hands helped him up. Yu Yuqian nodded and smiled as brightly as a chrysanthemum. "It's good that you're back. It's good that you're back." He looked Du Xiaofu up and down, from head to toe, as if he was trying to see if Du Xiaofu had suffered any injuries. The result made Yu Yuqian's face change dramatically. "Xiaofu, how did you get hurt so badly?" He spoke hastily, grabbing Du Xiaofu's arm and asking anxiously. At the same time, Yu Yuqian's eyebrows shot up like a raging rooster, on the verge of going berserk. "Your disciple is fine." Du Xiaofu was even more touched. Yu Yuqian's expression couldn't be faked. His concern was evident in his words. He didn't want to worry him, so he told him what had happened earlier, from meeting the experts of the sky-swallowing demonic wolf clan to escaping into the wormhole. However, when Yu Yuqian heard what he had said, he was dumbfounded. He didn't move for a long time. Kill a first sky of a mortal realm expert? Yu Yuqian's eyes opened wide like copper bells. His face was filled with disbelief. He stared at Du Xiaofu as if he was looking at a monster. What kind of concept was a first sky of immortal realm expert? That was an existence who had comprehended a complete primitive principle. He could easily borrow the momentum of heaven and earth to move. His means were sky-high. Yu Yuqian had spent many years relying on countless heavenly and earthly treasures to reach the first sky of a mortal realm. Didn't it mean that this kid's current power could compete with him? Yu Yuqian couldn't believe it. This guy's growth was too fast. Master, why are you looking at me like that?" Du Xiaofu felt his scalp tingle under Yu Yuqian's stare. He couldn't help but stutter. "Did you really kill a first sky of immortal realm expert?" Yu Yuqian cocked his head and asked again. He still couldn't believe it. The difference between the true severing realm and the immortal realm was like heaven and earth. In this world, the true severing realm experts who could fight against the immortal realm experts were as rare as phoenix feathers or unicorn horns. There weren't even 2 or 3 of them in the entire 33 skies. It was the gap between 2 big realms. It wasn't something that could be easily closed. However, Yu Yuqian knew that Du Xiaofu didn't have any heaven-defying treasures that could overlook the gap between 2 big realms. "Master, look." Du Xiaofu saw that his master didn't believe him, so he had to open his arms begrudgingly. He opened the desolate ancient space. The massive wolf corpse appeared in Yu Yuqian's sight. Looking at the sky-swallowing demonic wolf's corpse, which was like half a small mountain, Yu Yuqian was stunned. With his cultivation base, he could easily recognize that it was the corpse of an immortal realm expert. Only now did Yu Yuqian have no choice but to believe what Du Xiaofu said. He blinked and couldn't stop smacking his lips. He sighed inwardly. This kid was really intimidating. However, how could the wolf corpse be cut open? A part of it was missing? Could it be, "Kid, did you eat another immortal realm expert?" Yu Yuqian squinted and looked at Du Xiaofu. Looking at the sky-swallowing demonic wolf's corpse, Yu Yuqian instantly understood the situation. This brat must have been impudent again. After killing the immortal realm expert, he must have had a good meal. Du Xiaofu suddenly felt embarrassed. He touched the back of his head and couldn't stop laughing. "What are you laughing at?" Seeing Du Xiaofu's expression, Yu Yuqian suddenly flew up and slapped Du Xiaofu's head hard. "Master, why did you hit me?" Du Xiaofu's head went numb. Stars were about to pop out of his eyes. He covered his head and asked, feeling very wronged. "That's right, I hit you. You feel wronged." Yu Yuqian's beard stood on end as he glared at Du Xiaofu. Then, he knocked on Du Xiaofu's head like raindrops, producing a dong-dong sound. "Master, don't hit me. Master, let's talk." Du Xiaofu was dumbfounded. He covered his head and ran around in the palace. The more he talked, the more wronged he felt. He didn't know what he had done wrong. However, since his master wanted to hit him, he couldn't fight back. He had no other choice but to run. Most importantly, he was still seriously injured. He couldn't escape from Yu Yuqian's pursuit. "I'll let you show off. I'll let you show off," Yu Yuqian said angrily. He didn't show any mercy. He really turned into a raging rooster and slapped Du Xiaofu's butt. He would either knock Du Xiaofu's head with his knuckles or slap Du Xiaofu's butt into 18 pieces. "Master, I'm wrong. Master, I won't show off anymore. But you have to tell me where I'm wrong. Du Xiaofu jumped up and down, shuttling back and forth in the void. But he couldn't escape from Yu Yuqian's demonic hands. He was really helpless. Just now, they were chatting quite well, but why did his master suddenly get angry? Du Xiaofu couldn't figure it out at all. I'll let you show off. I'll let you show off. After Yu Yuqian hit him for a while, he stopped and stood in front of Du Xiaofu. His face was full of anger as he pointed at Du Xiaofu and said angrily, "Immortal realm. Do you know how strong an immortal realm is? You didn't think about running for your life after meeting one. You actually fought with him. Your cultivation has broken through. You're capable now, right?" Yu Yuqian stared at Du Xiaofu fiercely and rolled up his sleeves. He looked like he wanted to rush up and beat him up again. At first, when he heard that his disciple killed an immortal realm expert, he was really shocked because it was really hard to believe. But then Yu Yuqian came back to his senses. This brat was really audacious. He actually dared to fight with an immortal realm expert? His confidence swelled after breaking through. He wanted to die more quickly, right? Yu Yuqian was so angry that he really wanted to hang Du Xiaofu up and give him a good beating. Master, Du Xiaofu opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but he was interrupted by Yu Yuqian's cold shout. Shut up. Yu Yuqian almost jumped up. He pointed at Du Xiaofu and said, Look at you. Look at the injuries on your body. If they were any worse, your cultivation foundation would have been destroyed. You dared to fight with an immortal realm expert. Do you know how lucky you are to still be alive? He looked at Du Xiaofu, and when he spoke of Du Xiaofu's injuries, the fury in his eyes softened. In an instant, it turned into endless heartache. No matter how high his disciple's cultivation was, no matter how strong his ability was, it was not as important as his life. I know I was wrong. I won't do it again, master. Du Xiaofu covered his head with one hand and rubbed his butt with the other. He looked extremely wronged, but at the same time, he was moved. The reason why Yu Yuqian was so angry was completely out of consideration for his own safety. Thinking about it, in the process of fighting with Lang Ji, he also faced many terrifying dangers. The injuries he suffered were unimaginable, especially the tug-of-war between the two of them at the entrance of the ancient, desolate space. If he was not careful, he could have died without a burial place, never to be reincarnated. Thinking about it now, Du Xiaofu really felt that he was too audacious. No wonder Yu Yuqian was so angry. You dare to do it again. Hearing Du Xiaofu's words, Yu Yuqian's pupil shrank. He wanted to rush up and teach him a lesson. No, there won't be a next time. Du Xiaofu quickly shook his hands, not daring to quibble. Humph. Yu Yuqian's expression became a little better. He angrily took out something from his chinkuan bag and threw it to Du Xiaofu with great disgust, saying, Take this. Du Xiaofu caught it and looked at it in his hand. It was a jade bottle. He opened the cork of the bottle, and in an instant, a wave of energy so pure that it made one's hair stand on end came out. A ray of light erupted and flowed out from the mouth of the bottle like a solid liquid. It rippled in the air, and with a light sniff, one would immediately feel refreshed, as if half of the injuries on one's body had been healed. What a terrifying energy! Du Xiaofu's eyes trembled fiercely. He was shocked by the contents of the jade bottle. This was definitely not an ordinary thing. Just by opening the cork and taking a small sniff, he felt that his divine soul had become much more active. This is true spirit heavenly dew. It will be of great help to your injuries. It can nourish your body and divine soul. Find a time to take it and refine it well. Yu Yuqian restrained his emotions and said indifferently, Thank you, master. Du Xiaofu was very happy and bowed respectfully to Yu Yuqian. This was definitely something good. He quickly closed the jade bottle and put it into his chinkuan bag. Sigh. On the opposite side, Yu Yuqian suddenly let out a long sigh. He slightly raised his head and looked at the void, as if he could see through everything in the world. His whole body was overflowing with an otherworldly charm. He said, This old man has taken in many disciples in this life, but I know my own ability. I can't teach many good disciples. Only one of your senior brothers has outstanding achievements. But to be honest, He could grow to such a level, but it was not me who taught him. What I could give him back then was even less than what I can give you now. Mas, Du Xiaofu stepped forward, but saw Yu Yuqian waving his hand. He could only swallow the rest of his words into his stomach. Although I hope that every disciple can be extraordinary and can soar to the sky in one go and become a supreme talent, I know that this is unrealistic. So even if your talent is far from what ordinary people can compare to, I also hope that one day you can reach the same height as your senior brothers. But what I want to see more is that all my disciples can live well. Compared to standing at the top of the world and looking down on all living things, this is the most important thing. As Yu Yuqian spoke, there was a hint of desolation. Du Xiaofu will remember Master's teachings. Du Xiaofu bowed deeply. How could he not understand Yu Yuqian's thoughts? Just like the people around him, Du Xiaofu naturally hoped that they could all be dragons and become the strongest in this world. But if he had to choose between cultivation and life, Du Xiaofu would rather all of them be mortals and live out their lives peacefully. Master's talent is not enough, and I can't teach my disciples well. Everything depends on your own efforts. But sometimes, retreating when necessary is not a sign of weakness. Even those people who are worried about you must know how to weigh the pros and cons. When you are in an absolute disadvantage, you must have the courage to retreat. Yu Yuqian gently turned around and looked at Du Xiaofu as he spoke. I will remember. Du Xiaofu bowed again and replied seriously. Seeing Du Xiaofu's sincere attitude, Yu Yuqian finally nodded lightly. He put away his emotions and said to Du Xiaofu, quickly recover to your peak state and go to the ancient desolate space to refine the true spirit heavenly dew. Save some time. 5 days later, there is a big matter in the Yuqing Divine Kingdom that requires your participation. After that, you have to prepare to enter the Fiend God Battle Realm. A big matter in the Yuqing Divine Kingdom? Du Xiaofu was surprised. He knew that the Fiend God Battle Realm was about to open, but he didn't know what the Divine Kingdom was preparing for that he had to participate. That's right. At that time, there will be a competition between the younger generation. The final winner will receive an unimaginable reward. Yu Yuqian nodded and replied with certainty. A competition between the younger generation and an unimaginable reward? Du Xiaofu's eyes instantly lit up. He hurried to Yu Yuqian's side and asked shamelessly, Master, what kind of treasure is it? Yu Yuqian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This disciple of his had a crafty look. The moment he mentioned the reward, he became energetic. It was as if his injuries had healed in an instant. He had to admit that this little thief was as crafty as a ghost. As for what the reward is, I won't tell you for now. You only need to know that the reward is much bigger than you can imagine. Yu Yuqian put on a mysterious expression, glanced at Du Xiaofu, and said, It's that amazing? Du Xiaofu felt his body tremble slightly. He was extremely excited. From Yu Yuqian's words, the reward must be extremely amazing. Could it be a treasure on the level of a mid-grade or even high-grade law true treasure? Or could it be something as terrifying as the Azure Dragon's blood essence? When he thought of this, Du Xiaofu's blood began to boil. Since Yu Yuqian said that the reward was much bigger than he imagined, he might as well let his imagination run wild. According to the scale of the Yuqing Divine Kingdom in the Supreme Changrong Heaven, they should be able to obtain a low-grade law true treasure. That was why Du Xiaofu dared to think that the reward would be even bigger. I must obtain this treasure. Du Xiaofu rubbed his hands excitedly. His entire body was glowing, and he was full of energy. He was confident that among the younger generation of the Yuqing Divine Kingdom, his strength was definitely ranked at the top. There shouldn't be anyone who could compare to him. He knew the strongest Yu Chengxi, Duan Yizong, and He Jixin, and they probably wouldn't be a match for him. As for Yu Chengliang, Yu Chengyu, He Jibai, and the others, there was no need to even mention them. Kid, don't be too arrogant. This time, Chengyin and Chengyao have also returned from the 3,000 boundless worlds. In terms of cultivation, they shouldn't be much weaker than you. You have to be careful. Don't fall into their hands. Yu Yuqian glanced at Du Xiaofu from the corner of his eyes and snorted. Yu Chengyin, Yu Chengyao? Du Xiaofu was surprised. These two were the eldest son and eldest daughter of the divine emperor Yu Taiyan. In other words, They were the eldest prince and princess of the Yuqing divine kingdom, and the grandson and granddaughter of his master, Yu Yuqian. After Du Xiaofu came to the Yuqing divine kingdom, he had never seen these two people. He only knew of their existence. He had heard from He Zhibai and Yu Qingliang that Yu Qingyin and Yu Chengyao had cultivated for more than 2,000 years. Their cultivation was extremely profound, and they had already reached the true severing realm more than 1,000 years ago. Now that they had returned to the Yuqing divine kingdom, their strength must have increased tremendously. It could be said that if these two people participated in the competition in 5 days, they would definitely be strong opponents for Du Xiaofu. Chapter 28:10. Translator. Nyoibo Studio Editor. Nyoibo Studio. Du Xiaofu's lightning pillar also dissipated. After the collision, the energy shattered, forming a vast ocean of runes. The energy surged violently in all directions, flattening everything. When such a tyrannical attack landed, even the demon god was forced to take 3 steps back after taking it head-on. You do have some ability, but it's my turn to attack now. The demon god stabilized his majestic body. Then, under his control, the demon chi outside his body began to surge violently, as if it was boiling. The boundless and surging demonic chi rapidly condensed, emitting a jet-black light. Carrying an awe-inspiring aura, it transformed into a huge axe-shaped weapon that was extremely similar to the Blood Fiend axe that Imo Lingzi's Blood Fiend true body had used. However, at this time, when it was used by the demon god, its power was countless times greater than Imo Lingzi's. This huge axe was almost the size of the demon god's body. Held in his hand, the demon god's body was like a mountain, and so was the demon god's axe. The demon chi billowed, and an extraordinary power continuously converged on the huge axe, adding to its sharpness. The blood fiend chi was emitted, fluctuating the void, and directly pulling out a pitch-black spatial crack. In a trance, it made people feel that when such an axe chopped down, it could split the entire world into 2. Kill. The word kill was lightly spat out from the demon god's mouth. What followed was an energy storm that filled the sky, and the power of the entire area was trembling. That huge axe rapidly fell from the sky, heading straight for Du Xiaofu's head. The impact of the tyrannical force caused the 8 trigrams above Du Xiaofu's head, the mountains, lakes, and seas below to be severely distorted, as if they were going to collapse under such a force. At this moment, it was impossible to say that Du Xiaofu's heart wasn't overwhelmed with shock. However, no matter how horrified he was by the demon god's strength, it was impossible for him to take half a step back, and even more impossible for him to resign himself to death. Kill. The same words came from Du Xiaofu's mouth. On his body, the azure spirit armor shone with a blinding light. The profound energy in his body started to circulate crazily, emitting a roaring sound that sounded like the surging of a great river, its momentum ferocious. Surges of majestic energy surged and infused into the 8 trigrams, mountains, rivers, lakes, and seas. High up in the sky, the giant lightning net that had merged with the 8 trigrams in the void was being infused with endless energy. It struggled to change shape, trying to restore its original appearance. However, the demonic god's aura was simply too powerful. Under the immense pressure, the image of the 8 trigrams mountains, lakes, and seas in the void was constantly distorted. It was extremely difficult, but fortunately, after a fierce struggle, he finally managed to stabilize himself. However, at that moment, the giant axe in the demon god's hand had already reached Du Xiaofu's head. Absolute heavenly thunder destruction. Earth swamp Lu hexagram break. Heavenly fire dual destruction. Earth fire bright destruction. In a hurry, Du Xiaofu didn't have any time to think before launching several swift and violent attacks. Heavenly thunder roared, shattering the void. Mountains and rivers moved, shaking heaven and earth. Mountains and rivers roared with the raging thunder and fire, annihilating the void. It was incomparably terrifying. The purple-gold heavenly tower in Du Xiaofu's hand soared through the sky. The broadsword released an incomparably huge sword shadow that met the demon god's heaven-splitting axe without any hesitation. There was no fear in his eyes when facing a powerful enemy. Instead, it was filled with bone-deep hatred that was spewing out. Many years ago, the devil religion had been pestering him and the people around him. Tianwu Academy was even destroyed by the devil religion's tricks. So many students, teachers, and elders had died tragically in that battle. If one were to trace back further, the enmity between the two of them could be traced back to the primordial era. The ancestor of the Du family, the heavenly Tao of that time, had also fallen because of the demon god. It could be said that although this was the first time Du Xiaofu and the demon god had truly met, the enmity between the two of them had accumulated for countless years. This was destined by fate, and no one could change it. How dare a tiny grain of rice compete with the bright moon? As the demon god shouted, the huge blood-fiend battle axe cleaved down with an imposing aura. The boundless sea of blood surged with an earth-shattering momentum. The terrifying battle axe finally cleaved down, colliding fiercely with Du Xiaofu's attack. Boom, 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 boom. The two opposing forces collided, emitting a world-destroying boom. It was as if 10,000 mountains had collapsed, and 1,000 waves roared forth. Heavenly thunder, earthly fire, mountains, rivers, lakes, and lakes carried with them the power of nature. It was as if they possessed the rhythm of the great Tao. On the other hand, the demon god's power was bloody and murderous, filled with extreme ferocity. The two of them tore at each other, causing the entire area to be annihilated in an instant. The sea of fog was swept clean by the violent energy and was filled with broken talismans and mysterious runes. This kind of fluctuation spread out for thousands of miles. Everywhere it swept, the void was annihilated into ashes. Ka-ka-ka! The sound of porcelain shattering rang out. The void 8 trigrams above Du Xiaofu's head, which was compatible with the thunder martial vein, had a huge crack after being cleaved by the huge battle axe. In less than half a breath's time, it exploded into pieces, turning into broken energy that dissipated into the void. This energy was ferocious, like a tidal wave crashing into the wilderness and the wilderness. The figures of Du Xiaofu and the demon god were also annihilated by the energy that filled the sky. Even the power of the primordial spirit could not enter to spy on them, so no one knew the specific situation they were in. Thousands of miles away from this area, several figures shrouded in the fog were alarmed. What's happening? It seems like someone is fighting. Du Xiaoyao's huge red-bone horse monkey body stopped in the void and looked at the place where the vast fluctuation came from. In this fog, even the power of the primordial spirit can't penetrate it. Instead, the force of the battle can be transmitted here. How strong are the two parties fighting? Du Xiaoyao muttered to himself. His golden eyes turned and he deduced, there's a familiar aura in this energy fluctuation. It's the bosses. The other energy is related to the people of the devil religion. And the only person in the devil religion who can reach this level of strength is the demon god. Could it be that they met in this fog? Du Xiaoyao instantly deduced the specific situation over there. His expression changed quickly, and a strong sense of worry rose in his heart. He naturally knew Du Xiaofu's strength, and he knew the demon god well. If the two of them met and directly confronted each other, Du Xiaofu would have no chance of winning. How could Du Xiaoyao not be worried in this situation? Boss, you must hold on. I'm coming to help you. Du Xiaoyao muttered to himself. His figure crossed the fog, and he rushed in the direction of the energy fluctuation. Almost at the same time that Du Xiaoyao discovered the energy fluctuation, Huolei Laozu, the great demon emperor, the second demon emperor, and the others in other places also sensed the terrible energy fluctuation. It was not difficult to guess what had happened over there. Everyone knew that Du Xiaofu must have met the demon god. Without any hesitation, each and every one of them found the right direction and headed in that direction. Is he dead? In the energy storm that filled the sky, a deep voice rang out. It passed through all the barriers without any hindrance and resounded in the void. Then, a mountain-like figure rose from the ground, as if a mountain had suddenly grown out of the ground. The figure's muscles were bulging, and his explosive strength was blooming. Streaks of smoke like black gas lingered around him, and the atmosphere was filled with the aura of death. This person was the demon god. The devil religion is destined to rise, and it's unstoppable. How can the strength of an ant shake a tree? The demon god spoke, and his loud voice shook the sky. His gaze swept across the energy turbulence in the sky, and the power of the primordial spirit also probed. He slowly raised a palm and pressed it down gently. Whoosh! A powerful force came down and instantly suppressed the energy runes in the sky. When they fell to the ground, not even a speck of dust rose. It was also at this moment that the god-fiend suddenly let out a soft exclamation of surprise. The reason for that was because when all of the shattered energies were dispersed, a figure was revealed on the ground. The figure was half squatting, his head was slightly lowered, and his eyes were slightly closed. He held a broadsword in his hand, which was propped on the ground to support his body. A tattered purple robe covered his body, and he looked quite miserable. Besides Du Xiaofu, who had previously fought the demon god head-on, who else could it be? However, at this moment, Du Xiaofu's body did not emit any aura of life, which made him look as if he was dead. However, in the face of such a situation, there was an incredulous look in the demon god's huge eyes. He's not dead. The demon god looked at the figure of the purple-robed youth and could not help but exclaim in surprise. His face was filled with shock. Although all the aura of life on Du Xiaofu's body had been withdrawn, with the demon god's experience, how could he not see that at this moment he was at most injured and his life was not in danger? Sure enough, after half a breath, the purple-robed young man moved. After a soft swoosh, the slightly closed eyes suddenly opened a crack, and a ray of light shot out. He slowly raised his head, and then looked straight ahead, and suddenly opened his eyes. Chi. Two purple-gold thunderbolts shot out from his eyes, like two sharp sword auras. They dragged out a light pillar that was hundreds of feet long and pierced through the void. When the purple-gold thunderbolts appeared, a grand aura rapidly rose from Du Xiaofu's body. The devil religion wantonly massacred millions of lives. It is tyrannical. Although I, Du Xiaofu, do not have great ambitions, since I have walked to the top of this world, I also bear the responsibility of doing something for the people of this world. I believe that with my Tao body, I can punish your tyrannical actions. Even if I only have the power of a bion, not only can I move a big tree like you, I can even move the heavens. Chapter 28:11. Translator. H2 Mr. As Du Xiaofu spoke softly, the aura on his body grew more and more intense, radiating with a peculiar rhythm. At this moment, Du Xiaofu felt an inexplicable feeling brewing in his heart, one that he had never felt before. All these years, he had worked hard so that his family could be reunited, so that his friends and family could live in peace and happiness, so that the citizens of the desolate country could avoid disaster. He had always felt that as long as the people close to him could live well, even if the devil religion wreaked havoc on the world, or even if this world was reduced to a demonic realm, it would not have much to do with him. Of course, if he had enough power, he would not mind doing something for the billions of lives. However, now, he suddenly had a feeling in his heart. What he had done in the past was not wrong, but now that he had more power, he needed to take on more responsibilities. The path of cultivation was endless, and the path of the strong was like ascending to the heavens. If one wanted to stand at the peak and look down on the masses, then one must have the world in one's heart and be magnanimous. No matter how strong a person's power was, it could not compare to the power of all living beings. Only with a broad heart could one borrow the power of the billions of lives to slay gods and vanquish demons. This principle was similar to how human emperors gathered the faith of all living beings and gathered the imperial palace's dragon chi. If one wanted to reach the highest realm in the path of cultivation, this seemed to be an insurmountable threshold, a process that one must go through. At this moment, Du Xiaofu finally understood that the demon god was not invincible. Even though he had reached the peak of the strongest power in this world, as long as he gathered the power of all living beings in this world, he could definitely fight. During this process, not only could he protect his friends and family, but he could also use this to step onto the path of becoming an absolute powerhouse. Can the power of a Tao Wu shake the heavens? The demon god muttered and could not help but raise his eyebrows slightly. That violent attack just now did not cause much damage to the purple-robed young man, which made him extremely surprised. This young man's power was indeed extraordinary. In the face of Du Xiaofu's words, the god-fiend couldn't help but tremble a little, as if he was looking at an ant. With his cultivation, he naturally knew more than Du Xiaofu. Wasn't the birth of an ultimate powerhouse just like that? If he couldn't even protect the people behind him, then the path of the ultimate powerhouse that he talked so much about was just a joke? Even for an expert like Lu Xiaoyu, the countless living beings under his control could make him the supreme lord of the 3,000 great thousand worlds, and at the same time, they also needed his protection. Only then did the demon god's eyes show a trace of seriousness. He looked at Du Xiaofu and began to see this young man in a new light. The person that Lu Xiaoyu has chosen is indeed not mediocre. At this point, I have to admit that with your natural talent and comprehension ability, you do indeed have the qualifications to become my enemy. The demon god said softly, his eyes fixed on Du Xiaofu, and his tone was extremely serious. However, as soon as he finished speaking, his expression changed slightly. He narrowed his eyes and said, "Unfortunately, you're still too immature. If you don't have enough time to grow, you'll still be an ant in the end. Anyone can boast, but if you don't have the strength to match it, you'll only be laughed at. Although Tao Wu is brave, I'll let you know that no matter how great your perseverance and ability are, you can't shake a giant tree." As he spoke, the demon god withdrew his aura, and the bloody and murderous energy between heaven and earth surged wildly, converging toward him. The mountain-like body of the demon god moved horizontally, and the blood-red giant axe in his hand once again chopped down at Du Xiaofu. In the billowing demon chi, the gloomy power was vast and mighty. It was as if the door of the netherworld had opened, and ghosts and evil spirits rushed out, screaming and howling. The giant axe's shadow smashed down, and the void was split in half like seawater. It was directly torn in half, and rapidly spread toward Du Xiaofu. The vast power spread out, confining the void. Even with Du Xiaofu's strength, he felt that he was being suppressed to the point of being unable to breathe. "Come on. Today, with the body of Tao Wu, I'll shake a giant tree like you." Du Xiaofu snorted coldly, and a look of determination appeared in his eyes. An unyielding will rose from the bottom of his heart, causing the void to hum along with it. Facing the demon god's mighty axe, he withstood the pressure and slowly straightened his body, and his eyes did not flicker at all. When the extremely murderous attack fell on the top of his head, suddenly, a golden light flashed on his body, and his body disappeared from the spot. Boom! The giant axe fell, but it hit nothing, and a huge roar sounded. The ground was directly cut open vertically, and a huge chasm appeared, so deep that the bottom could not be seen. Amidst this earth-shaking roar, one could see that the purple-robed figure had unknowingly passed through the demon god's blockade and directly appeared beside his burly body. The purple-gold heavenly fault in his hand suddenly stabbed down, ruthlessly piercing the demon god's chest. Time seemed to have frozen. The giant axe in the demon god's hand was dragged on the ground, and he did not move. Du Xiaofu held the broadsword in his hand and stood in midair. Blazing bolts of lightning swirled around the sword, constantly entering the body of the fiend celestial. Demonic blood flowed from the blade and dripped down his muscular body. The blood seeped into the ground beneath his feet and corroded a large area of the earth. Du Xiaofu held the sword with both hands and stood in midair. Compared to the demon god's massive body, Du Xiaofu's body seemed very small. However, this sword, with the help of Fu Yao, had actually caused some substantial damage to him. The great golden-winged rock race's space profound meaning, the demon god said softly. Suddenly, he let go of the giant axe in his hand and swung it fiercely at Du Xiaofu. At this moment, the huge palm became incomparably agile. It felt like with just a slight movement, It had already reached Du Xiaofu's side and slammed down on him. A terrifying energy fluctuation stirred up a domineering storm, instantly enveloping Du Xiaofu's body. Golden light flashed on his body once again, illuminating an endless distance. Fu Yao activated once again, wanting to pull out his sword and retreat, dodging the demon god's attack. However, Du Xiaofu helplessly discovered that the god fiend's palm carried a terrifying imprisoning force. It directly fixed his entire body in midair. No matter how hard he tried, he was unable to break free. Even the Fu Yao, which had always been successful, could not get him out of this situation. Green spirit armor, rise for me. Du Xiaofu shouted softly. Light burst out from his body, scorching and glaring like the sun. When the demon god's palm landed, the broken green spirit armor on his body formed once again. The palm that blotted out the sky and covered the earth was countless times larger than Du Xiaofu's body. When the purple-robed figure was hit, he was like a mosquito, ruthlessly sent flying with a slap. Rip, puffed. The sound of ripping silk and vomiting blood were heard almost at the same time. In the sky, Du Xiaofu spat out a mouthful of blood, emitting a purple-gold light, dragging a trail of dozens of feet long. The green spirit armor on his body shattered in an instant. It could not block the demon god's attack at all. I've said it before you fully mature, you are no different from an ant in my eyes. The demon god said loudly. Looking at the figure flying backward, he raised his palm again and slammed it down on Du Xiaofu. Demonic chi surged violently as if it had materialized, turning into a torrential ocean, raging waves beating the shore. When such a move was made, Du Xiaofu's body lit up with a golden light. He wanted to use the Fu Yao to dodge. Trying to escape? Under my spatial seal, can you escape? The demon god said loudly, and his palm struck out rapidly. Boom, boom, boom. The void shook, and the world seemed to be overturned, creating a sense of disorder. Waves of spatial ripples spread, and time and space began to become chaotic. In a trance, Du Xiaofu saw the huge palm sweeping across the sky, covering heaven and earth. No matter how he tried to dodge, it was as if there was nowhere to escape. Under the Fu Yao first style, he was unable to break through the air. It seems that it will be difficult to dodge this time, he thought in his heart, and the corner of his mouth could not help but curl into a bitter smile. Just as the demon god had said, the gap between the two of them was too great, and it was not something that he could overcome. If it weren't for the fact that they were in this strange area where the demon god's strength was also suppressed, Lin Fan would not have the slightest ability to resist when facing him. He would only be crushed to death. It was simply a fool's dream to want to stab the demon god in the chest like he had just done. Du Xiaofu smiled bitterly, and at the same time, a sense of despair crept up in his heart. In the face of absolute power, no matter how unyielding one's will was, it would be crushed in an instant. The demon god's methods were indeed terrifying. Under the spatial seal, it seemed that there was no chance for him to escape. Spatial seal. Suddenly, a thought flashed through Du Xiaofu's mind. He suddenly remembered what he had experienced when he was in the dragon's territory. At that time, the dragons had used all their resources, and Long Huang had relied on his tyrannical strength to execute a spatial technique. He had severely injured him, and he had not even had the chance to escape. Du Xiaofu's memory was still fresh in his mind. That technique was called Space Scar. Now that he thought about it, although the demon god's spatial seal was many times more powerful than Long Huang's technique, it was much cruder in terms of its principles. His current strength had long surpassed Long Huang's at that time, and his mastery of the profound meaning of space and his stronger technique seemed to be limited to the Fu Yao. When faced with the demon god's spatial seal, he still seemed to be unable to make ends meet. Chapter 28:12. Be careful, Brother Tongue. Du Xiaofu no longer hesitated. With a thought, the purple-gold heavenly tower appeared in his hand. In the next moment, he activated the law of matter and infused it into the broadsword in his hand, causing the entire sword to tremble violently. Divine Technique Heavens, 10,000 swords hold up the heavens. Slash. Tung Yuanshan shouted loudly. Then, the tens of thousands of law of swords around him turned and pointed at Du Xiaofu. Under his control, the countless light swords moved at the same time. Each of them carried the fluctuation of law as they attacked Du Xiaofu. Chi chi chi. The void was instantly destroyed, and deep cracks appeared. The light swords in the sky formed a cage and rapidly squeezed toward the center. Good timing, Du Xiaofu shouted, but he didn't move immediately. Instead, he slowly raised the purple-gold heavenly tower above his head, until the moment when the tens of thousands of law of swords were about to reach him. A thunderous explosion erupted from his throat, roar of the sacred sword. Hum! The purple-gold heavenly tower shone brightly, and a terrifying aura swept out in an instant. It gathered into a huge sword light that seemed to penetrate the heavens and earth, brazenly appearing between heaven and earth. This sword light was held in Du Xiaofu's hand and slashed down. Boom, boom, boom. As the sword light descended, the entire world was turned upside down by the strange power. Heaven and earth were destroyed, the earth collapsed, and the sky darkened. This scene looked like a part of the sky was held in Du Xiaofu's hand and moved, causing a terrifying roar. Chi chi chi. The sword light descended faster and faster until it finally slashed down like a pillar that reached the heavens. Vast power rose and boiled endlessly. The attacks of both sides finally collided. The law of matter entangled with each other, brazenly crushing and devouring each other. Du Xiaofu's sword light carried a majestic power, while Tung Yuanshan's tens of thousands of law of swords were numerous and endless. In the end, all the power between the two after intense consumption turned into nothingness. Only the boiling energy that filled the sky turned into a void storm, dense and dancing. Walala! Under this ferocious collision, the protective array formation around the two of them shook, creating huge ripples. This scene also attracted the attention of many strong people. The array around the battle arena was set up by the God Nation's Immortal Realm experts. It was to control the leakage of the terrifying power Qi Yas. Tung Yuanshan is the most outstanding disciple of the Divine Technique Palace in the past 10,000 years. Indeed, he is, but compared to Du Xiaofu, he has no advantage. Xiaofu? Yeah, Du Xiaofu has only cultivated for less than 200 years. Being able to reach the late stage of truth severing at such a young age is really hard to believe. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been accepted as a disciple by the imperial ancestor. Yes, his performance in the origin space really made him shine. He is far beyond ordinary people. I wonder who will win this battle between him and Tung Yuanshan. It's a pity no matter which of these two outstanding people doesn't make it to the top 100. Many strong people of the God Nation were talking about Du Xiaofu and Tung Yuanshan. In their opinion, Tung Yuanshan won because of his age. Coupled with his outstanding talent and thousands of years of accumulation, he was not someone an ordinary person could compare to. Du Xiaofu's talent could only be described as heaven-defying. In just over 100 years, he had already reached such a level. If this competition had been held 100 years later, it was very likely that he would have grown to the point where he could take first place and fight against the top 100. If that was the case, it would be too terrifying. It was not something an ordinary person could do. At the very least, within the sphere of influence of Yuqing God Nation, there was no such person. Therefore, everyone was looking forward to the result. They wanted to see whether Du Xiaofu or Tung Yuanshan would win. However, contrary to the expectations of these strong people, Yu Yuqian, Yu Taiyin, Chu Daoju, Ling Feng, Long San, and the others were sitting in the seats of honor. They were all calm and did not look anxious at all. Xiaofu actually hid most of his strength. I wonder what he wants to do. Chu Daoju suddenly smiled and said. He felt a little strange. With Du Xiaofu's strength, he was afraid that Tung Yuanshan would not be able to withstand one move and would be defeated directly. But who would have thought that the boy would only use less than 10% of his strength? That holy sword roar was indeed a little interesting, but it would still be very difficult to defeat Tung Yuanshan. Time, space, matter, and soul. He cultivates the 4 primal laws at the same time. This boy's behavior is already different from ordinary people. What he does is even more earth-shattering. Who can easily see through his thoughts? Ling Feng curled his lips and rolled his eyes. He was one of the people present who understood Du Xiaofu the best. But he still didn't know what Du Xiaofu was planning. After all, it was very difficult to find someone who dared to cultivate the 4 primal laws at the same time in the 33 heavens. We've worked so hard, and we've even offered the benefits of 100 true weapons of laws. Our goal is to raise the final reward to an unimaginable height. With Xiaofu's temperament, I'm afraid he won't give up so easily, right? Long Sin chuckled. No one knew what he was thinking. Only the few of them knew about the greatest reward. It was extremely tightly sealed, and no one had been told. Moreover, in order to increase the difficulty of this competition and convince everyone, he had even taken out 100 law true weapons as bait, all for the sake of making the benefits even more extraordinary. With such benefits placed there, with Du Xiaofu's personality, no matter how difficult it was, he would fight for it. Don't worry, I know my junior brother very well. He will definitely give up such a great opportunity and fight for the law true weapons. You must know that he has many law true weapons on him. Yu Taiyan also laughed. He continued, moreover, this competition was prepared for him in the first place. If he doesn't fight for first place, I think I won't be able to resist slapping him to death. As he spoke, he raised his palm and placed it in front of his eyes to examine it. Prepared for Du Xiaofu? Hearing Yu Taiyan's last sentence, He Mingchong, Duan Baichuan, and Hua Yuankuan couldn't help but be stunned. Only now did they know that this competition, which involved all the big and small forces of the entire divine nation, was prepared for Du Xiaofu. This made the 3 of them sink into endless imagination. They were thinking about what kind of benefits would make them spend so much effort to obtain it. It doesn't matter if he fails, but he must fight for it. If he gives up, then all of our efforts will be in vain. Chu Daoju nodded, showing that he agreed with Yu Taiyan. Sometimes, it was better to let the other party fight for it than to give it away. That way, he could accept it more. Xiaofu won't fail. After all, he killed a first sky of Immortal Realm expert. Yu Yuqian, who was standing next to Yu Taiyan, suddenly muttered. When Du Xiaofu came back from dozens of years of seclusion in the Jing Flower Heaven, the first person he met was Yu Yuqian, and he told him everything. If he could fight a first sky of Immortal Realm expert and kill him, no matter what kind of tricks he used, it was an extremely terrifying battle record. With this kind of power, when facing 100 true severing experts, although it wasn't certain, he still had a big chance to win. However, although Yu Yuqian said it casually, the 3 godly generals next to him were even more shocked. Fuck. Is it true? He even killed a first sky of Immortal Realm expert? No way. How could it be? Du Xiaofu is strong, but he shouldn't be that monstrous. Imperial Ancestor doesn't look like he's bragging. Seems like we've always thought that Du Xiaofu is extraordinary, but we've underestimated him. Finally, it makes sense now. No wonder His Majesty set such a terrifying requirement to let the first place of this competition fight against the top 100. Since he killed a first sky of Immortal Realm expert, he does have a big chance to suppress the others and get the final reward. The 3 godly generals were stunned. They just knew that Du Xiaofu had killed a first sky of Immortal Realm expert. It wasn't something an ordinary person could do. They could only use the word monstrous to describe how terrifying it was. Perhaps because of this, the Emperor God had set such a terrifying rule in this competition. Among the people here, perhaps only Du Xiaofu could compete for it. Just like His Majesty had said, the final reward was prepared for that kid. While people outside were discussing, the battle between Du Xiaofu and Tang Yuanshan started again. Brother Du, you're really strong, but that was just a test. Next, I will use all of my power. Gazing at Du Xiaofu, Tang Yuanshan's voice was deep. After the battle, he found that the purple-cloaked young man was stronger than he had expected. Like him, the purple-cloaked young man didn't use all of his power. This made Tang Yuanshan feel serious. If he was defeated by this man, he would have no chance to get that true weapon of universal law. Thinking about this, Tang Yuanshan's face became solemn. The long sword in his hand flew up into the sky. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Dazzling light rippled from the sword. The patterns of universal law flowed like water, interweaving in the air. Along with it came a formidable pressure that could make people's hearts palpitate. It fiercely pressed the void, shaking the earth and sky. Magical hand seals appeared in Tang Yuanshan's hands. They were complicated and mysterious, but they carried a marvelous power. Under Du Xiaofu's gaze, the long sword in the sky was covered with endless power of universal law. It looked like layers of light cocoons covering the sword. Eventually, it turned into an incomparably majestic lightsaber. It was like a mountain that connected the sky to the earth, towering in the world and emitting a fierce light. Go. Tang Yuanshan softly spat out this word. He suddenly pointed his finger forward, and the huge lightsaber suddenly fell down with a rumbling sound. This was no longer a lightsaber. It was more like a mountain that was pressing down. It had the power to destroy everything and sweep across the world. The void collapsed under that terrifying power, turning into powder and ashes. Interesting. Du Xiaofu's mouth curved into a smile. He was interested in Tang Yuanshan's method. He decided to use some of his true strength to break this move. Absolute hegemony domain. Rise? Du Xiaofu bellowed. The space law was unleashed, and the absolute hegemony domain expanded rapidly, spreading outward. Not far away, Du Xiaofu's lightsaber pressed down and crashed into Du Xiaofu's space domain. This scene was extremely shocking. It was as if a huge mountain had crashed into a huge lake, setting off stormy waves. Du Xiaofu's space domain shattered and collapsed under the pressure of the lightsaber. Waves of space burst out like a tide rushing to the sky. It had to be said that Tang Yuanshan was very strong. He was indeed at the late stage of true severing realm and had been in this realm for many years. That terrifying lightsaber had the power to destroy heaven and earth. Even Du Xiaofu's space domain collapsed inch by inch. Of course, if Du Xiaofu had released his absolute hegemony domain earlier and wrapped Tang Yuanshan in it, he probably wouldn't have had the chance to release such a terrifying attack. Your strength is indeed not bad. Du Xiaofu's gaze moved slightly. He stared at the huge lightsaber that was descending and immediately chuckled. However, this is far from enough. As soon as he finished speaking, an even more vast power of the space domain was released and fiercely restrained the lightsaber from slashing down. God-binding grip. These words came out of Du Xiaofu's mouth. He stretched out his hand and clenched it from afar. Rumble. Heaven and earth shook. Under the suppression of the space domain, the lightsaber was instantly crushed into powder by Du Xiaofu's God-binding grip. It turned into the purest energy and scattered in the void. At this moment, Tang Yuanshan was still in a daze when he saw this scene. Du Xiaofu moved again. His absolute hegemony domain continued to extend and directly imprison the other party's figure within, making it difficult for him to move. In an instant, Tang Yuanshan's expression changed greatly. He looked at the purple-robed youth in disbelief and muttered, "This is the space domain." He struggled for a long time, but the surrounding space seemed to be frozen. His entire body was firmly fixed in place, and he couldn't make any effective movements at all. This was too terrifying. He had never experienced such a powerless feeling before. Everyone knew that among the four great primordial laws, the time domain was the most profound and difficult to understand. The matter domain was the most heterogeneous and all-inclusive. The soul domain was the most mysterious and could create all living things. And the space domain was the most vast and encompassed the universe. An expert who could cultivate the space domain to the great accomplishment realm was definitely a terrifying existence. Although Tang Yuanshan had heard that Du Xiaofu had some attainments in the space domain, he didn't expect it to be so terrifying. He tried to struggle and break free from the restraints, but just as he started to use his power, Du Xiaofu was already close to him and just stood at the side looking at him. I admit defeat. Tang Yuanshan struggled for a long time, but in the end, he could only give up helplessly and said somewhat dispiritedly. Tang Yuanshan's cultivation was on par with his opponent's. If it was deeper and he reached the complete stage of true severing, then he would have a chance to break free and continue to fight. But his opponent was already close to him. If he attacked, Tung Yuanshan wouldn't be able to resist at all. Tung Yuanshan smiled bitterly. In a moment of carelessness, he didn't have any power to resist at all and lost the chance to fight. In his opponent's space domain, Du Xiaofu was the absolute master. All struggle seemed so futile. Thank you for letting me win. Du Xiaofu smiled slightly and withdrew the space domain. He cupped his fists and said to Tung Yuanshan. Around them, everyone was surprised when they saw the result of the fight between the two. Tung Yuanshan was defeated just like that? It can't be. That's too straightforward. Du Xiaofu's space domain is so powerful. With just one suppression, Tung Yuanshan couldn't even resist. He's too strong. He's not just strong. Du Xiaofu's growth is really terrifying. Even Tung Yuanshan, who was at the peak of the late stage of true severing, was defeated so easily. Du Xiaofu probably has the strength to win first place. Winning first place isn't a good thing. I'm afraid no one wants to be first place now. TSK, instead of fighting for that illusory great benefit, it's better to get a nomological true weapon. Yeah, that's a nomological true weapon. My heart is itching to go down and fight. Can you be more shameless? You've been cultivating for tens of thousands of years, and you're still at the complete true severing stage. How dare you say that? Many experts began to talk. They were amazed by Du Xiaofu's strength and felt sorry for Tung Yuanshan at the same time. After all, this was the 5th round. After the end, there were only 100 people left. With his cultivation, it would be easy for him to reach the top 100, but he fell here and lost to Du Xiaofu. After missing out on a law-true artifact, everyone could only sigh. This was all fate. Brother Du is really strong. I'm ashamed of my inferiority. Tung Yuanshan shook his head and said to Du Xiaofu. He looked at the purple-robed youth as if he was looking at a monster. When ordinary people were at the true severing stage, they would choose a primitive law to cultivate with all their might. True severing stage meant to sever the cage and reconstruct the true self. It meant to abandon those useless paths and concentrate on one path in order to reach a higher stage. However, Du Xiaofu was different from ordinary people. Tung Yuanshan could see that his attainments in the matter and space laws were extremely deep. Especially the matter law, it was almost at the perfection stage. Tung Yuanshan could only feel helpless about losing to such a guy. Brother Tung's strength is already very strong. Du Xiaofu replied politely and then didn't say anything else. Instead, he turned his gaze to the other battlefields. At this time, the results of over 100 battlefields had already been decided. Among them, Yu Qingyan and Yu Chengyao won without any surprise. Duan Yizong, Yu Changxi, and He Jixin also defeated their opponents after a bitter battle. In addition, Fatty Fan Yushu's good luck didn't continue. He was quickly defeated by a mid-stage true severing stage expert and had no chance to participate in the next round of challenges. Chapter 28:13. The demon god has already left. Let's quickly follow him. We can't let him easily obtain the item to recover. Huolei Laozu looked in the direction the demon god had left and spoke with a serious tone. That's right. The fog is closing in and will soon cover this area. We have to quickly follow the demon god before he goes too far. Du Xiaofu nodded and no longer spoke. He led Du Xiaoyao and Huolei Laozu into the distance. In just a short while, they had entered the mist that filled the sky. This time, because they had a fixed direction, they knew the uniqueness of the fog. They were more careful and kept a close distance from each other, so they didn't get separated again. However, it wasn't easy to follow the demon god's footsteps. No one knows where the item the demon god is after is. I presume he doesn't know either, which is why we met in the fog. Now, we can only rely on luck. As long as we find that item before him, we can delay his recovery for a long time. Du Xiaofu spoke to Du Xiaoyao and Master Flamespark as they moved forward. It's just that in this fog, everything is a blur. We can only rely on luck. Du Xiaoyao's tone was serious and her eyes were filled with worry. If the Fiend Celestial had obtained it earlier and successfully recovered it, the subsequent situation would have been extremely terrible. There is no other way. We can only do this. Huolei Laozu's old face was also tense. Du Xiaofu didn't continue to speak and focused on moving forward. During this process, the three of them had all released the power of their souls and tried their very best to see through the obstruction of the sea of mist in order to find a way out. However, under the terrifying pressure, Du Xiaoyao and Huolei Laozu's strength was greatly restricted. What's more, it was very difficult for the power of their origin souls to penetrate the fog here. However, aside from finding a direction and moving forward to try their luck, there was no other way out. Just like this, Du Xiaofu's group of three continued to move forward through the fog. They kept a very close distance from each other to prevent themselves from getting separated again. Time slowly passed. There was no sun, no moon, and no stars, so it was difficult to determine the exact time. However, according to Du Xiaofu's estimation, it had been no less than a month since they had crossed the void corridor and entered the fog. Inside the vast fog, nothing could be seen aside from the area around them. The power of their origin souls couldn't penetrate this place. It was very monotonous and boring. This feeling was much more intense than when he was in the void corridor. Most importantly, the pressure that suppressed their souls hadn't weakened in the slightest. Under such dual effects, how could they not feel exhausted? "Boss, I can't take it," Du Xiaoyao said. Du Xiaoyao was very anxious. There was an unbearable expression on his handsome face. His eyes were also a little red. "Don't panic. I think this is more like a test. It's related to one's state of mind. If you can't calm your mind, it'll be very difficult to get out of here," Huolei Laozu said softly as he tried to persuade Du Xiaoyao. In fact, there was a trace of exhaustion on his old face. However, he was an antique who had lived for eons after all. In terms of state of mind, he was much steadier than Du Xiaoyao, who had only risen to prominence in recent years. On the other hand, Du Xiaoyao's journey had been smooth sailing all these years. He hadn't even encountered any great difficulties. The most tragic time was probably when he plunged headfirst into the tomb of the heavenly Tao and was trapped for half a month, constantly being struck by lightning. Let alone Huolei Laozu. Even Du Xiaofu's experience was far too lacking in terms of tempering one's state of mind. "Hold on a little longer. We'll definitely find a way out." Du Xiaofu comforted him. Due to his cultivation, his condition was much better than Huolei Laozu's. He didn't feel too impatient. He raised his hand and waved it gently. 2 rays of green light shot out and entered Du Xiaoyao and Huolei Laozu's bodies. This was the profound meaning of the grass of immortality. It could stimulate vitality and purify the soul to a certain extent. After this, Du Xiaoyao and Huolei Laozu's complexion became much better. They became more energetic. "Let's continue," Du Xiaofu said softly as he led Du Xiaoyao and Huolei Laozu forward. He estimated that if an ordinary saint came here, it would be easy for him to become agitated if his state of mind wasn't well trained enough. He faintly felt that perhaps what Huolei Laozu said was true. This was a testing ground. If one's state of mind wasn't strong enough, once he felt uneasy, he wouldn't be able to strengthen his beliefs and walk in a certain direction. If that was the case, the final result would be to get lost in this place and never be able to get out. Thinking of this, Du Xiaofu felt that this speculation was very reasonable. After he told his thoughts to Du Xiaoyao and Huolei Laozu, the two of them agreed with him. After understanding the crux of the matter, even Du Xiaoyao restrained his emotions and was no longer as agitated as before. They continued to search in the fog and gradually calmed down. Time continued to pass. After about half a month, Du Xiaofu suddenly noticed some movement. "Someone's here," Du Xiaofu said. He felt that just a moment ago, the breath of a living creature had almost brushed past them. "Someone's here? Is it the Devil Emperor of the Devil religion?" Du Xiaoyao asked. As far as they knew, only 6 Devil Emperors had entered this place after them, and 4 of them had been taken away by the Devil God himself. "Let's go and see." Du Xiaofu frowned slightly and took Du Xiaoyao and Huolei Laozu in a certain direction. The 3 of them passed through layers of fog and headed toward the place Du Xiaofu had sensed. At the same time, Du Xiaoyao and Huolei Laozu were also on high alert. The distance they could sense in the fog was very short. If the person who appeared in front of them was someone from the Devil religion, they would attack at once. However, when they passed through the barrier of the sea of fog and saw the figure, the 3 of them were stunned for a moment. "How come it's you?" Du Xiaofu exclaimed softly, his eyes filled with surprise. In front of him stood a peerless beauty. Her body was exquisite and curvaceous. Her red lips, in particular, were extremely enchanting and seductive. However, at this moment, her large eyes, which should have been exceptionally seductive, were mostly occupied by a haggard look. Needless to say, this state was because of the fog. Seeing Du Xiaofu and the other two arrive, the woman's tired eyes suddenly lit up. Her red lips curled up in an indescribable joy. "You're still alive, kid." The woman smiled at Du Xiaofu and gave him a coquettish look. However, under that tired look, this coquettish look seemed a little weak. This woman was Hunji, who had rushed all the way from the desolate country to the demon realm after sensing the devil god's movements. "We haven't seen each other for so long. Do you want me to die that much?" Du Xiaofu rubbed his nose and did not look at Hunji, afraid that this woman would do something that he could not bear. He asked Hunji, "Why are you here?" He had originally asked Hunji to guard the desolate country in case the devil religion's experts, such as the Devil Emperor, suddenly attacked. He did not expect her to appear here. Hunji stretched out a few slender fingers and combed the hair in front of her forehead to the back of her head. She rolled her eyes at Du Xiaofu coquettishly and said softly, "It's all because of the commotion you caused, boy. You even attracted the demon god. If it weren't for the fact that I was afraid that you would be slapped to death by the devil god, do you think I would be willing to come? I've been in this damned place for almost a month." Although the content of these words was not very friendly, Du Xiaofu could not help but feel touched after hearing them. It turned out that the woman in front of him had spied on the devil god's movements and had come from far away to help him. Moreover, the time she had entered this place was not much later than his group. Hunji ignored Du Xiaofu's expression and continued. When the devil god moved, he did not conceal his aura. Therefore, as long as one's cultivation was high enough, they would be able to detect his movements. Now, it's not just me. I'm afraid that most of the top experts in the 3 continents in Kyushu have come here. The large group of people from the desolate country is no exception. Under Elder Yi's arrangements, they will quickly arrive. However, I don't know where they are now. When she said this, Du Xiaofu, Du Xiaoyao, and Hualazi were all shocked. Although the devil god's movements had made them feel extremely pressured, and the living beings in the demon realm were extremely nervous, they had not expected this. The 3 continents, Kyushu, and other places would be in an uproar. Surprisingly, many people from different factions had come to this place. However, this was not something difficult to understand. After all, the threat of the devil god was something that no one dared to take lightly. So many people have come? I hope nothing happens to them, Du Xiaofu said softly, but his heart was filled with worry. Including the desolate country, all the major factions had sent experts to the demon realm. Needless to say, their goal was the same, which was to help him. And now, if these people stepped into the void corridor and ended up trapped in the fog, the situation would not be too optimistic. However, Du Xiaofu was not worried that their lives would be in danger. After all, those who could come here were at least experts of the Saint Realm and above. Not many of these people had bad states of mind. There were really very few like Little Demon Du who had a smooth journey like this. However, most of these people were relatively weaker than Du Xiaoyao in terms of cultivation. Chapter 28:14. Dad can definitely do it. Little Qielin nodded vigorously in Ouying Shuang's arms. To talk about confidence in Du Xiaofu, probably no one had more than these 3 little fellows. In their eyes, their dad, Uncle Xiaofu, was practically invincible in the same realm. No matter how great the difficulty, he could overcome it. Therefore, even if there were more than 100 people joining forces to fight, the 3 little fellows still did not look nervous at all. "Ha ha ha, Brother Du, your spirit is indeed unmatched. Chengxi admires you." The third prince, Yu Chengxi, suddenly laughed out loud. He looked at Du Xiaofu with eyes full of admiration. Brother Du is a young hero, fighting 100 alone. Regardless of success or failure, I, Zhang Haoran, am wholeheartedly convinced by you. In the crowd, a young man smiled faintly and also said so. Although strictly speaking, you're my martial uncle Du, When Qingyan attacks, I'll absolutely go all out. Yu Qingyan also looked at Du Xiaofu, his entire body brewing with fighting spirit. Begin. Martial Uncle Du, be careful. Yu Chengyao smiled lightly and said very straightforwardly, everyone, attack together. Although you're all very strong, I'll definitely fight with all my strength too. Du Xiaofu shook his robes and made a starting gesture, inviting everyone to battle. At the same time, an invisible wave rose from his body, rapidly spreading to the surroundings, pervading the void. Fight! Duan Yizhong's mighty and tall body suddenly stepped forward. A fierce aura burst forth, domineering and awe-inspiring. Fight! 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 Practically at the same time as Duan Yizhong moved, the others also swiftly moved. Walala! A large expanse of power of laws surged out violently, spreading out. The power of more than 100 people intertwined together, surging violently like diving. These people all unleashed their full strength, attacking Du Xiaofu, only wanting to defeat him quickly and obtain that law-true weapon. As for Yu Qingyan, Yu Chengyao, and the others, they wanted to see Du Xiaofu's true strength, because they didn't hold back either. Since that guy dared to take the initiative to make such a choice, he must have a trump card. He must not be careless. In the blink of an eye, a great battle broke out. More than 100 people charged from all directions and surrounded Du Xiaofu. There are 13 people in the late stage of truth-severing. The pressure is really not small. While Du Xiaofu unleashed his absolute hegemony domain, he also observed the situation on the battlefield. These people came from the various great forces of the Yu Qing Divine Kingdom, and were all extraordinary disciples. Aside from the imperial families Yu Qingyan and Yu Qingyao, there were also 11 late-stage truth-severing realm cultivators. Among them, there were even a few who had reached the peak of the late-stage truth-severing realm. In terms of cultivation, they were not below him. With so many experts gathered together, Du Xiaofu had no choice but to treat them seriously. The spatial laws were fully unleashed. He wasn't in a hurry to attack, but instead took a defensive stance in order to stabilize the situation first. Outside the battlefield, including the upper echelons of the Divine Kingdom and the experts from various forces, everyone stared at Du Xiaofu and the others without blinking. Most of them were extremely nervous. The competition has begun. Can that Du Xiaofu really hold on? This is too difficult. With more than 100 people joining hands, not to mention his late-stage truth-severing realm cultivation, even a complete stage truth-severing realm cultivator would find it hard to defeat him. That's right. Unless he's a half-step immortal realm cultivator, then there's a greater chance. That kid is really too arrogant. Although he has the strength to be arrogant, he's a bit too arrogant. Just watch. This will definitely be a fierce battle. Since Du Xiaofu dares to do this, he definitely has some confidence. I think so too. It won't be easy for those 100 people to defeat him. They'll have to go through a bitter battle at least. It's rare to see such an exciting battle. Let's watch more and gain more. Outside the battlefield, people were discussing animatedly. They were all looking forward to this battle. After some experts had calmed down, they realized that Du Xiaofu wasn't an ordinary person. If he dared to do this, he must have some confidence. While they were discussing, some early-stage truth-severing realm experts were watching carefully. They wanted to learn something from this battle. Brother Yu, do you think that Xiaofu kid can win? In the upper echelon of the Divine Kingdom, Long San frowned and turned to ask Yu Taiyan. He knew Du Xiaofu well. He knew that he was strong, but he couldn't defy the natural order. This kid has killed a first sky of immortal realm expert. He has a chance to win this battle. Yu Taiyan didn't answer, but Ling Feng next to him answered. Anyway, killing a first sky of immortal realm expert was the result of using all of his strength. Plus, he had his ultimate trick and luck. Otherwise, to the true severing realm, the immortal realm is an insurmountable gap. How could he kill one that easily? Chu Daoju frowned and said softly, this battle wasn't the same as a battle with an immortal realm expert. After all, there were too many young experts here. Du Xiaofu was attacked from both sides. If he couldn't handle it well, he would be in a mess. I still think highly of him. If he can't do it, how can I give him everything? Yu Taiyan's face was calm as he chuckled. Give him everything? He Mingchong, Hua Yuankuan, and Duan Baichuan, the three god generals, arched their brows when they heard Yu Taiyan. They didn't know what he meant. They exchanged looks, but they didn't know what to do. However, the three of them had a strange feeling. They couldn't describe it, but they couldn't figure it out. How could my disciple lose? At the side, Yu Yuqin muttered in dissatisfaction. While talking, he clenched his fists. He was more nervous than anyone else. He didn't even blink as he watched the battle. At this moment, Du Xiaofu and more than 100 experts clashed together. His spatial laws were activated and spread out, enveloping everyone within it. What a terrifying space law! Under this terrifying space law, everyone felt a huge pressure on their bodies. It was as if they were stuck in a swamp and couldn't move. Break it together. Break it. An expert yelled out as his aura surged from his body. The others didn't want to fall behind. They all moved at the same time. The power of law flowed out of their bodies with difficulty, shuttling through the absolute dominance domain. The power of law intertwined with each other, weaving a magnificent net of law. It fluctuated with a powerful aura that made one's scalp tingle. Then, with a series of cracking sounds, large cracks appeared on Du Xiaofu's absolute dominance domain. It spread out like a spider web. Bang! With a loud explosion, his space domain instantly shattered under such circumstances, turning into fine powder. It could no longer trap everyone. The power of more than 100 experts was too intimidating. With their cooperation, even Du Xiaofu's space law couldn't resist them. Although their combined power couldn't compare to the first sky of a mortal realm expert of the sky-swallowing demonic wolf clan, it was enough to break Du Xiaofu's defense. Fight! Take him down! The young experts from the various powers shouted, and their figures flashed like bolts of lightning as they tore through the sky and charged towards Du Xiaofu in an instant. Go! Go together! More than 100 figures moved at the same time, trying their best to attack. A large area of light vibrated, creating a terrifying wave of attack. It was like a flood sweeping over the ground, destroying everything as easily as breaking dry branches. It was as if the void had been plowed by diligent oxen. Deep trenches appeared one after another, extending all the way to Du Xiaofu's front. More than 100 attacks appeared at the same time. The scene was terrifying. Everything around was destroyed. Space turned into nothingness, pierced through, and turned into powder. It's really intimidating. Du Xiaofu stood in the center of those attacks. He squinted as he was shocked by the power of those young experts when they joined hands. If this situation was a life or death battle, he was confident that he could retreat safely. He could even leave calmly. However, it was a competition. He had to defeat them to get the final reward. Moreover, the word retreat wasn't Du Xiaofu's specialty. His gaze was deep as he slowly said, "If that's the case, then let's use our trump card." After he finished speaking, he shouted again, "Void 8 trigrams, rise." Buzz, buzz, buzz. A domineering aura suddenly descended and suppressed the void. Du Xiaofu's 10 fingers moved swiftly, one after another. Strange hand seals were formed by him. Along with that, a huge 8 trigrams appeared above his head. It was as if it was made of gold and iron, releasing a texture. It occupied the air and released an extremely vast aura. Then, scenes formed under the 8 trigrams. Heavenly lightning, earthly fire, mountains, rivers, and everything in the universe appeared. Under the derivation of the power of law, they were like real objects. At the same time, the space law spread out silently. With the support of the 8 trigrams, it blended with everything derived from the matter law, causing the space around Du Xiaofu to become independent. What kind of technique is this? It's terrifying. That 8 trigrams is extraordinary. It can perfectly link the space law and the matter law. It's too terrifying. This isn't something an ordinary person can have. Where did this guy get such a technique? Du Xiaofu is really something. No wonder he's so arrogant. With this 8 trigrams technique, he really has the strength to fight. The appearance of the 8 trigrams shocked many people outside the arena. Among these people, there was no lack of immortal realm experts. They quickly saw the terror of the 8 trigrams. Under the combination of this technique, Du Xiaofu's matter law and space law merged into one, causing their power to increase explosively. This was not a one-to-one superposition, but an exponential increase. It was like a full-strength punch that could shatter a mountain. If 2 punches could shatter 2 mountains, then if someone could condense the power of these 2 punches and unleash it at once, the power and destructive power would far surpass the superposition of the previous 2 punches. This was an unrealistic metaphor, but it was enough to explain some of the logic. Moreover, that terrifying pressure was all-pervasive. Even if they were standing outside the arena, everyone could clearly feel it. Those with slightly weaker strengths had to circulate the profound qi in their bodies with all their might before they were able to suppress this pressure. This clearly showed how ferocious it was. One could imagine how much pressure the space of more than 100 people was under. This technique is really terrifying. I don't know what the result of this collision will be. Some experts murmured, looking at Du Xiaofu with shock in their eyes. With the purple-robed young man as the center, the surrounding space looked like an otherworldly world. Everything in it was controlled by Du Xiaofu. He stood proudly in it like a god, looking down on the world. I'm afraid it will be difficult to resist. Who doesn't have a trump card on them? It's still too early to determine the winner. Some Immortal Realm experts were calmer and analyzed. As the crowd watched anxiously, the attacks of more than 100 people had already reached the range of Du Xiaofu's 8 trigrams. Boom, 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 boom. Loud explosions reverberated. When the attacks entered the range of the 8 trigrams, thunderbolts surged out, clusters of flames blazed, mountains rumbled, and waves of fury swept across fiercely. Under this boundless aura, the attacks of more than 100 experts were destroyed one by one, turning into pure energy that drifted away in the world outside of Du Xiaofu's body. However, under such a terrifying collision, the heavenly lightning, earthly fire, earth, mountains, raging seas, and lakes all collapsed one after another, creating an earth-shattering tremor. In the sky, the 8 trigrams shook violently, but it quickly stabilized and wasn't affected too much. Under Du Xiaofu's control, all the effects in the surroundings recovered after being destroyed. The thousands of Dharma images in the greater world evolved again, releasing a mighty aura that flowed and floated under the 8 trigrams in the void. Du Xiaofu is so powerful. He actually resisted this wave of attacks so easily. Among the more than 100 experts, a light shot out from their eyes as they looked solemnly at the purple-robed youth opposite them. Before all the scenes under the 8 trigrams in the void reformed, they had already retreated. Otherwise, it would have been extremely dangerous for them to be trapped in it. He's really terrifying. If he didn't have a certain level of confidence, how could he dare to challenge more than 100 people at the same time? Someone also spoke, his words incomparably profound. Du Xiaofu's strength made everyone palpitate. In the beginning, all of them thought that it would be difficult for one person to fight against 100 people, but now, they didn't dare to underestimate the purple-robed youth anymore. Let's be careful and take care of each other. Be careful not to capsize in the gutter, someone said, and communicated with the people around him. Under normal circumstances, it would be easy for them to take down Du Xiaofu with so many people. However, the strength that the guy had just displayed was too strong, so they didn't dare to take him lightly. If they were too careless, they might really be taken advantage of. If more than 100 people still lost, it would be a great loss of face. Most importantly, the nomological true weapon rewarded by the kingdom of God would be completely fated with them. Thinking of this, everyone perked up and once again gathered their terrifying aura. This martial Uncle Du is really extraordinary. If it's a one-on-one fight, I'm afraid I'm not his match at all. In the crowd, Yu Chengyin's lips curled into a wry smile. As the eldest prince of the kingdom of God, his talent was also quite outstanding. However, compared to Du Xiaofu, he was still too lacking. This made Yu Chenyin feel somewhat helpless. No wonder his grandfather wanted to take this guy as a disciple. No matter how strong he is, I still want to fight with him. On the contrary, Yu Chengyao's eyes were burning. and the corners of her mouth curled into an elegant smile that contained endless surprise at the same time. She had bright eyes and white teeth, and her gaze was like waves, delicate and beautiful. Fight. Take down Du Xiaofu. Take him down. Fight. 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 Soon, more than 100 experts' fighting spirit rose from their bodies. Use whatever means you have to take him down, an expert shouted loudly, and his entire body suddenly rose into the air like a sun hanging high in the sky. On his body, the bright light was incomparably dazzling. This was the power of laws fluctuating. Everything in the field suddenly began to vibrate violently. As long as it was something derived from the law of matter, it instantly resonated with it. For the nomological true weapon, fight, another person shouted loudly and took out an item from his cosmos bag. It looked like a bloody stone, and he held it in his hand. Then, under the circulation of the mystic energy in his body, the bloody stone released a blood-red glow, carrying with it an incomparable murderous aura that was terrifying to the bone. Break his 8 trigrams technique, fight, fight, fight. At the same time, a young man's hair fluttered, and his foot shattered the void. His body suddenly expanded, and his entire body shook, as if he wanted to break through the sky, becoming incomparably tall and mighty. Soon, among the more than 100 people, many experts displayed some of their hidden techniques and began to join forces to attack Du Xiaofu. Rumble, the expert whose body had expanded into the sky, moved his palm across the sky, covering half of the sky, and covered the 8 trigrams in the void, brazenly suppressing it. Wherever his palm passed, the void was shattered into nothingness, as if walls were collapsing, and there was a loud noise that shook the sky. Chi. On the other side, the expert who had activated the power of laws in his body and resonated with everything around him also made his move. The terrifying power of the law of matter was condensed by him, and it turned into a terrifying ball of light that shot out. It was like a bright sun rolling down, and it carried a heavy feeling that was countless times stronger than a giant mountain, and it fell directly on the 8 trigrams in the void. Buzz, a terrifying aura that caused one's soul to tremble, rapidly rose into the air. Vaguely, a gust of chilly wind blew by, accompanied by the screams of evil spirits and the wails of vengeful spirits that made one's scalp go numb. This was a cultivator of the law of soul, and he had extraordinary attainments in the path of life. The power of his law of soul expanded and permeated, penetrating into Du Xiaofu's domain bit by bit, and it was difficult to completely resist. Fight, fight, fight. Not only the 3 of them, but the other experts also made their moves. At least a dozen experts took out their own hidden techniques, wanting to fight Du Xiaofu head-on and defeat him. Chapter 28:15. Translator. H2DH2 Mr. In just an instant, Du Xiaofu felt a pressure as heavy as Mount Tai descend upon him. That aura collapsed, making it difficult for him to raise his head. Everyone's joint attack was too terrifying. Although it had yet to truly descend, it already made it difficult for him to breathe. Void 8 trigrams rise. Du Xiaofu's face instantly flushed red, and he suddenly let out a loud roar. Buzz, buzz, buzz. A terrifying whistling sound spread out, causing the void to tremble. Above his head, the void 8 trigrams pattern spun rapidly, going up against the sky. Its shape also expanded rapidly, directly encompassing the entire huge square. And at this moment, everyone's attacks finally descended, brazenly smashing into the 8 trigrams pattern. A huge palm swept across the sky, as if the sky was pressing down, carrying with it a destructive force, directly slamming into the 8 trigrams pattern. Crackle. A shattering sound could be heard. Under this huge force, small cracks quickly appeared in the void 8 trigrams, and the light also dimmed a little. But fortunately, such a terrifying attack did not harm its foundation. The terrifying 8 trigrams was still spinning rapidly, having the power to suppress the heavens and the earth. But right after that, a ball of light like the sun suddenly descended, ruthlessly hitting the 8 trigrams pattern. With a loud rumble, Du Xiaofu's body shook along with it. His expression instantly became a little ugly, having been slightly shaken. Huff, huff, huff. Everything did not stop, and no less than 50 people continued to attack ferociously. It was as if bolts of lightning were striking down, tearing the heavens and the earth apart. The various Dharma images around Du Xiaofu were also trembling incessantly, almost collapsing under this terrifying impact. This was especially true for the 8 trigrams pattern above his head. This time, the cracks that appeared were even more terrifying. Every inch of the pattern was covered with cracks. Ka-ka sounds were incessant. The impact was particularly huge. It issued a series of tremors and was on the verge of collapsing. This scene was too terrifying. The space around Du Xiaofu was completely annihilated by violent energy, and the laws of nature were intertwined everywhere, causing one's heart to tremble. Admit defeat. With your strength alone, how can you fight against more than 100 people working together? Suddenly, a cold voice rang out. It came from the mouth of a young man. This was a cultivator of the law of soul. At this time, the bloody stone in his hand had completely disintegrated, turning into a torrent of bloody energy that spread out. Wrapped in the fluctuation of the law of soul, it seeped into the myriad of phenomena around Du Xiaofu bit by bit. And just when Du Xiaofu was unable to stop himself from trembling from the joint attacks of everyone, the energy of his soul laws seized this opportunity to enter. Like a flood opening a dam, it suddenly charged towards the violet-robed youth at the center. This was a surprise attack. The laws of the soul were mysterious to begin with, the greatest miracle in the world, closely related to the life of every living being. When the power of the soul laws wrapped around Du Xiaofu, he felt a wave of dizziness in his mind. It was as if his primordial spirit had been imprisoned, making it difficult for him to move. At the same time, the strength in his body seemed to be rapidly sucked away, draining away at an alarming rate. What a terrifying cultivation! This is the true power of the law of soul. Du Xiaofu thought in an instant, unable to suppress his shock. He had some attainments in the law of soul, but compared to his opponent, he was far inferior. Under the erosion of this power, whether it was his physical body or primordial spirit, both were rapidly weakening. But this was not the most terrifying thing. The most terrifying thing was that he felt his life force fading away, dissipating. His life force was rapidly being sucked out of his body, and his consciousness felt somewhat blurry. Du Xiaofu, admit defeat. It's already extremely commendable that you can resist until now with your own strength. It's definitely not something an ordinary person can do. But if you want to truly defeat us, you're still a little lacking. At this time, a powerhouse shouted loudly. This was only a competition, not a life and death battle. The goal of many disciples was to obtain the law-true weapon, not Du Xiaofu's life. Looking at the current situation, if the fierce battle continued, the violet-robed youth would be in danger. It would not be good if he was seriously injured. After all, he was the disciple of the Divine Kingdom's imperial ancestor. I can't defeat you? Du Xiaofu shook his head, driving away the dizziness. At this moment, he was already in a dangerous situation. In addition, there were dozens of people attacking again. It was as if they were covering the sky and the earth, rolling up waves of energy that surged violently into the sky. Everyone wanted to take down Du Xiaofu as soon as possible, so they did not hold back when they attacked. In the eyes of the surrounding people, this scene caused many people to reveal looks of pity. Sigh, this Du Xiaofu's talent is outstanding. I'm afraid he's not inferior to some outstanding disciples of the Holy Land. That Void 8 trigrams technique is even more strange and inexplicable. Unfortunately, he still can't win this battle. It's difficult for 2 fists to fight against 4 hands, not to mention that he has to fight against more than 100 cultivators of the same realm by himself. This is definitely not something that can be done by human strength. But then again, it's already beyond expectations that he can last so long. If it's one-on-one, not to mention these people present, I'm afraid that ordinary true severing perfection experts are not his match. For such an outstanding talent, please don't hurt your foundation here. It's better to quickly admit defeat. There's no meaning in continuing to fight. The competition this time is simply too abnormal. No, this is not a competition at all. This is letting Du Xiaofu be tortured. Hurry up and admit defeat. In fact, you've already won. Many people kept talking. They were amazed by Du Xiaofu's performance. At the same time, they also hoped that he would admit defeat sooner. Putting aside the thousands of immortal experts who had killed the Juling Holy Land back then, the Yuqing Kingdom's territory and overall strength were not strong in the supreme Changrong heaven. Now that a terrifying junior like Du Xiaofu had appeared, everyone hoped to see what kind of realm he would grow to in the future. Therefore, no one wanted to see Du Xiaofu severely injured to the point of hurting his foundation. Otherwise, the loss would be too great. After all, more than 100 people attacking together was not a joke. Once they did not hold back, anything could happen. However, at this time, contrary to the nervous and anxious attitude of these people, the group of imperial family members sitting in the seats of honor was unusually calm and did not show any signs of anxiety. Xiaofu, this kid, should be using all his trump cards now? The void 8 trigrams that Lu Xiaoyu taught him is indeed extraordinary, but it can't possibly withstand so many people attacking together. Beside Yu Taiyin, Long San looked at Du Xiaofu and said indifferently. There was no special expression on his face. Yes, he still has many hidden trump cards. Although he might not be able to defeat these people easily, if he wants to contend with them and even obtain the final victory, there's still hope. Ling Feng nodded in agreement with Long San's words. No rush, no rush. That kid is very smart. He knows very well what to do. Let's not worry about this. Chu Daoju smiled leisurely and looked as if he was at ease. Haha, let's watch carefully. I have a feeling that this kid won't let us down. Yu Taiyin laughed and continued to look at the field. Beside him, Yu Yuqin stared at the field without blinking and secretly encouraged Du Xiaofu. The three divine generals listened to Chu Daoju, Long San, Ling Feng, and Yu Taiyin's words with strange expressions. They really could not understand why these people had such strong confidence in Du Xiaofu. In the field, Du Xiaofu watched as the power of law intertwined and rushed toward him. At the same time, the all-pervasive power of law of the soul made him feel like he was about to collapse. He really felt like he could not resist it anymore. However, in the face of such a situation, the corners of his mouth curled into a smile. He suddenly shouted coldly, "Azure Spirit Armor!" Roar! As the cold shout fell, a terrifying dragon's roar spread across the field. Suddenly, an incomparably huge azure dragon's body suddenly appeared in the void, rolling and twisting, oppressing the whole world until it rumbled. Azure dragon's body. What kind of technique is this? Everyone was stunned, feeling greatly surprised. He's clearly a human. How can he turn into an azure dragon? What a terrifying Du Xiaofu. He actually has such a technique. Is this his trump card? No wonder he dares to claim first place and fight against all the heroes alone. It seems that it won't be easy for those over 100 people to take him down. Everyone looked at the field with trembling eyes. The huge azure dragon's body was thicker than a mountain. Its dragon scales were arranged in an orderly manner and exuded a strong sense of power. It was a visual impact. Everyone was very surprised. Why did Du Xiaofu, who was clearly a human, suddenly transform into an azure dragon? Or perhaps, he cultivated some kind of technique that had such a remarkable ability. But this was not the key. The key was that the cultivation of the azure dragon's body definitely required the azure dragon's blood essence, or something related to the azure dragon bloodline. Where did Du Xiaofu get those things? However, they did not have time to think about these things. Because at this time, Du Xiaofu's terrifying azure dragon's body flipped in the void and crushed all the attacks into powder. At the same time, the power that the cultivator of the Law of Souls used was also quickly isolated outside. Next, it's my turn to counterattack. The huge dragon's eyes turned and swept across the sky. Under Du Xiaofu's refinement, all the power that invaded his body was expelled. Under the effect of the immortal Xin body, the injuries that he had suffered earlier were also quickly healed. After all, the strength of these over 100 people was relatively weak, and could not easily cause too much damage to him. He transformed into an azure dragon's body. This guy is really terrifying. In the field, the young experts stared at Du Xiaofu and could not suppress the shock in their hearts. He's really strong. He blocked such a fierce attack just now. Looks like we'll have to give it our all from now on, someone said and felt a deep sense of pressure. No one had expected Du Xiaofu to have such a trump card. They could not help but be surprised. I originally wanted to fight him alone, but it looks like I was thinking too much. In the crowd, the brother and sister Yu Chengyin and Yu Chengyao looked at each other and smiled bitterly. They could see the helplessness in each other's eyes. After they returned to the Yuqing Divine Kingdom from the 3,000 boundless worlds, everyone told them all kinds of news about Du Xiaofu, which made them very curious. After seeing him in person, the two of them wanted to fight him directly to verify whether the rumors were true. At the same time, they wanted to satisfy their desire to fight. But now, it looked like they were really thinking too much. With the combat strength that Du Xiaofu had shown, they were no match for him at all. It should be known that the combined attack of more than 100 people in the field had only injured him slightly. If this guy still had some hidden cards that he had not used, then he might really be able to defeat them. If that was really the case, then it would be shocking. Everyone, don't hold back anymore. If you don't give it your all, then the nomological true weapon will not be with us. At this time, a young disciple from a force in the divine kingdom shouted, Du Xiaofu is very powerful. It looks like it won't be easy for us to hurt him. Don't hold back anymore and give it your all. Soon, someone took over and said to the surrounding people, their purpose in this battle was to obtain the nomological true weapon and bring it back to their respective sects as their cornerstone treasures. Previously, these people had been apprehensive about Du Xiaofu's identity and did not want to hurt him. But now, it seemed that this guy would not be hurt at all. He had even used the Azure Dragon's body. How could his foundation be hurt so easily? Attack! As they spoke, the experts from all sides moved in an instant. Once again, endless nomological power fluctuated and swept toward Du Xiaofu, weaving into a large net that enveloped the sky. Many people used their strongest techniques. The terrifying power of the laws caused the surrounding space to fiercely tremble. Outside, the array that enveloped the entire field also shook violently like a weak willow that was blown by a strong wind. Fight! Loud shouts rang out as figures rushed into the sky. All kinds of secret techniques shook the sky, causing heaven and earth to tremble. Good timing. Faced with everyone's attack again, Du Xiaofu's throat let out a terrifying roar that was mixed with a dragon's roar. Waves of sound waves rushed out. His dragon tail swayed in the void, sweeping in all directions to meet the terrifying attacks. Void 8 trigrams. At the same time, he shouted again. Waves of fierce power entered the void 8 trigrams above his head, causing the broken cracks to quickly heal. Then, it released a bright light. Below, heavenly lightning and earthly fire, mountains and rivers, lakes and seas, and other things formed one after another, as if evolving into an independent world. The nomological power of space covered a huge area, turning the surrounding boundless area into his own domain. Under such circumstances, the attacks of over 100 people bombarded the independent world outside Du Xiaofu's body time and time again, causing terrifying damage. But this time, with the protection of the Azure Spirit Armor, all the ferocious attacks were crushed into nothingness by his dragon tail at the final moment. His dragon scales were flying, his flesh was exploding, and wounds appeared on his dragon body. But even so, Du Xiaofu still had unparalleled power. He received all the attacking nomological powers and shattered them. This scene was too shocking. More than 100 high-level truth, severing stage cultivators surrounded Du Xiaofu and attacked. The power was enough to shatter a world. But in the center, the figure of an azure dragon moved up and down. The mighty power of the dragon's body shot out, destroying the attacks again and again. With his own strength, he withstood everyone's attacks. This was simply too terrifying. It was hard to believe. Outside, all the spectators were dumbfounded. No one spoke. They were all watching the battle on the field without blinking. None of them had ever seen such a terrifying scene before. In fact, it was almost impossible for it to happen. Even imagining it was inconceivable. At this moment, everyone's hearts were incomparably shocked by Du Xiaofu's strength. It was difficult for them to calm down. He's actually strong to this extent. This azure dragon's body is even more terrifying than imagined. Among the people who attacked, there were some cultivators who were extremely shocked. They were shocked by Du Xiaofu's might. Fuck, this guy isn't human at all. These methods are too terrifying. Another person cursed. Large amounts of sweat rolled down his forehead, and his back was also soaked. If this continues, it'll really be very difficult for us to defeat him. There was a young cultivator in the early stage of truth, severing stage, who was lucky enough to stay until the last round. He was directly dumbfounded. His eyes were wide open, and his face was filled with disbelief. Everyone, put in more effort. For the nomological true treasure. Fight. Suddenly, such a voice rang out in the field, quickly pulling up the overall morale. Fight. For the nomological true treasure. Everyone, attack together. Beat Du Xiaofu into a pig's head. Only by beating him down can we get the treasure. Charge. Hit him. In an instant, more than 100 people erupted again. Carrying an even more powerful force, they attacked Du Xiaofu. Such a scene was extremely shocking. That terrifying attack was too ferocious. If you have any other methods, use them as soon as possible. If you're a little later, I'm afraid you won't even have the chance to show it. Because next, Du Xiaofu blocked everyone's attacks while opening his dragon mouth slightly. As he spoke, he suddenly paused, and then said in a valiant and domineering tone, "I'm going to sweep the field." This voice was incomparably vast. Mixed with the sound of a dragon's roar, it resounded between heaven and earth. Not only the spectators, but even every corner of the divine city could hear it clearly. Roar. A dragon's roar reverberated, shaking the 9 heavens and the 9 underworlds. The sky exploded, the earth collapsed, and the universe was turned upside down. The entire world dimmed instantly. Countless people in Yuyang Divine City and Yuqing Divine Palace covered their ears at the same time. They felt that their souls were being violently attacked and were about to collapse. The array set up by the Immortal Realm experts on the periphery was directly torn apart after a loud bang. Then, they saw the energy inside rush out like a flood, and even the entire array was torn to pieces. This scene made countless people tremble in fear. Chapter 28:16. When Ouyang Shuang and Lu Limo opened their eyes, they saw a thick bolt of lightning exploding in front of them. It was as if it could split the heavens and earth apart as it blasted toward the evil demon's head. This bolt of lightning was extremely thick, and it was like a winding mountain as it shot forward murderously. Boom, boom. Thunder rumbled, shaking the heavens and the earth. A frightening lightning pillar blasted out and directly struck the head of the evil demon. Boom, boom, boom. Roar. When the two collided, a terrifying explosion rang out. At the same time, it was accompanied by a blood-curdling howl. Soon after, under the shocked gazes of the two, the gigantic devil's head suddenly fell apart, turning into pieces that fell from the sky. The powerful energy swept across the area, blowing away the fog in a radius of thousands of miles, revealing a barren area. Everything in the vicinity was taken in by their eyes. Behind Ouyang Shuang and Lu Limo, there were 4 figures standing for a long time. These 4 people were Du Xiaofu, Du Xiaoyao, Huolei Laozu, and Hun Ji, who were traveling through the fog. Xiaofu, human sovereign. Seeing the arrival of these people, Ouyang Shuang and Lu Limo's eyes flashed with joy. Since Du Xiaofu was here, the crisis today had been resolved. The 3 demon sovereigns could no longer do anything to them. On the other side, the 3 demon sovereigns were forced to retreat after being hit. Their eyes flickered with unwillingness. "Are you all okay?" Du Xiaofu ignored their expressions and slowly retracted his hand. He turned to look at Ouyang Shuang and Lu Limo with a smile. With the help of the spiritual energy in his cosmos bag, he discovered the situation here from afar. The three people who were originally here did not notice the arrival of the four of them. After the battle with the demonic god, the great demon sovereign, the four demon sovereigns, and the five demon sovereigns appeared and were taken away by the demonic god. He did not expect that the three demon sovereigns would encounter Ouyang Shuang and Lu Limo here. If he did not have the Cosmos bag of Tianwu Academy, something unacceptable would have happened. Du Xiaofu. The three demon sovereigns gritted his teeth and looked at Du Xiaofu warily. He had wanted to kill the two women here and give Du Xiaofu a blow. However, just as he was about to succeed, Duan Ling Tian suddenly appeared and ruined his plan. With the strength of the purple-robed young man, he did not have any chance to attack. At the thought of it, the three demon sovereigns, if he didn't retreat quickly, he might very well lose his life here. After figuring this out, he did not dare to delay any longer. He immediately turned around and retreated into the fog behind him. Are you trying to escape now? If I let's see, I will lose my face eye of you. Du Xiaoyao grunted coldly when he saw this, and then his figure directly flashed through the sky. As he moved forward, his body emitted a dazzling golden light that dyed the surrounding fog a golden color. Then, Du Xiaoyao's body transformed into a huge redbone horse monkey. It was extremely tall and sturdy, and it stood proudly in the air. Roar! The redbone horse monkey's roar shook the heavens and the earth. A palm that was covered in golden light came down from the sky. The dense fog was rolling, and a monstrous might came crashing down toward the three demon emperors without the slightest delay. Get lost. The three demon sovereigns cursed and turned to look at Du Xiaoyao. Demonic chi gathered behind his back and turned into a huge shield. It stood there like a city wall and emitted a sense of firmness. Boom! The huge palm of the redbone horse monkey slammed heavily on the wall shield formed by the demonic chi. It was as if it had hit a muffled drum, and there was a continuous rumbling sound. The demonic chi shield was smashed by the palm. Crack! Crack! Cracks spread rapidly on the wall. Soon, with a bang, the wall shield was smashed into pieces. Then, it evaporated and turned back into demonic chi, drifting in the air. At this time, the three demon sovereigns had gone hundreds of miles away. In front of him, the fog was slowly shrinking, and soon, it would cover his figure. He did not want to fight Du Xiaoyao head-on. Instead, he fled directly into the fog. The three demon sovereigns knew that if he continued to fight with Du Xiaoyao, once Du Xiaofu attacked him, he would lose the chance to escape. In this area, as long as he entered the fog, even if Du Xiaofu came back to his senses and wanted to kill him again, he would not be able to do so. I've said that you can't escape today. Du Xiaoyao snorted coldly. His mountain-like body strode in the air and chased after the three demon sovereigns at an extremely fast speed. Humph! The three demon sovereigns snorted coldly. When he found that Du Xiaofu did not chase after him with his primordial spirit, he heaved a sigh of relief. And Du Xiaoyao's relentless pursuit caused a sense of viciousness to involuntarily arise in his heart. Their figures were extremely fast. After a short while, they disappeared into the fog one after another. Seeing this, Ouyang Shuang and Lu Limo began to feel anxious. Let's go and help the little demons. If we delay any longer, we will not be able to catch up with them. Ouyang Shuang said hurriedly. She did not care about Du Xiaofu, Huolei, and the others. She stretched her body and was about to rush out. She knew that if she lost track of Du Xiaoyao in this fog, it would be extremely difficult for her to find him again. In the face of the three demon sovereigns, Du Xiaoyao might be able to protect himself with his strength. However, if he fought with the three demon sovereigns head-on, he might not be a match for them. You are injured. Take a rest first. Du Xiaofu reacted quickly and pulled Ouyang Shuang back. Then, taking advantage of the situation, he pulled her soft body into his embrace and lovingly stroked her hair. But Ouyang Shuang struggled for a while. Her eyes were filled with anxiety. It's okay. We will go and help the little demons in a while. Take a rest first. Du Xiaofu interrupted her and comforted Ouyang Shuang with a mysterious smile. He knew the strength of Du Xiaoyao and the three demon sovereigns. Although the cultivation of the three demon sovereigns was slightly stronger than that of Du Xiaoyao, it was absolutely impossible for them to kill Du Xiaoyao. Moreover, with the help of the soul power in the cosmos bag, he could catch up with them in a short while. This foggy space might be difficult for others to move around. However, for him, it was as easy as walking on flat ground. But, just as Ouyang Shuang was about to say something, she suddenly seemed to have thought of something. Her red lips parted into a circle as she looked at Du Xiaofu in disbelief, her almond-shaped eyes staring at him. Obviously, this guy must have a way to find Du Xiaoyao and the three demon sovereigns quickly. That was why he was so calm. Ouyang Shuang only pondered for a moment before she understood Du Xiaofu's plan. Then, she suddenly felt a large hand pressing down on the perky part of her back and was constantly rubbing against it. This caused her to frown, and her hair to stand on end. "Get your hands off me," Ouyang Shuang shouted. Her pretty face was flushed. At the same time, she stretched out her slender fingers, which were wrapped by surging Xian Qi. Then, she grabbed Du Xiaofu's left and right arms and twisted them a few times. "Ow!" Du Xiaofu screamed like a pig being slaughtered. He quickly let go of Ouyang Shuang's arms and jumped away. Hiss, hiss! Du Xiaofu kept sucking in a breath of cold air. His face was distorted as he looked at Ouyang Shuang with an indescribable bitterness in his eyes. This tomboy is still so cruel and merciless. Even my immortal Xian body can't stand it. It's so painful that I have no friends. On the side, Lu Limo, Hunji, and Huolei Laozu looked at each other. Then, they looked away and pretended that they didn't see anything. Ouyang Shuang didn't seem to have any intention of letting it go. She rushed to Du Xiaofu's side again. She grabbed his ear with one hand and put her other arm on her slender waist. She stared at him angrily, but her tone was very gentle. "Dear, let me ask you. When you came here just now, who did you say was your woman?" As she spoke, she glanced at Lu Limo from time to time. Du Xiaofu understood the look in his eyes. "Does that mean that there were two women here just now? I wonder, dear, is she one of the women you're talking about?" "Men. Oh no, dear, I'm just talking about you. Is that wrong?" Du Xiaofu smiled bitterly. He knew how terrifying this tomboy was. How would he dare to go against her? Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to keep that thing. "Really?" Ouyang Shuang smiled sweetly. Her smile was very gentle, like a spring breeze. However, when this sentence fell into Du Xiaofu's ears, it gave him a completely different feeling. "Really? Of course it's true. I swear. I'll touch that thing," Du Xiaofu quickly said. At the same time, he reached for his crotch. Shameless. Ouyang Shuang couldn't help but spit. She was finally defeated. Her beautiful face instantly turned as red as a ripe apple. There were other people present. No matter how tough she was, she couldn't stand Du Xiaofu's actions. Oh my god, this is really too much. On the other side, Hunji touched her smooth forehead. She was also defeated by the two of them. Hee hee, Fire Thunder Ancestor chuckled. No one knew what was going on in that old man's head. Only Lu Limo's expression didn't change. However, if one looked closely, one could see that deep in her pearl-like eyes were disappointment. Cough cough. Let's go and help Xiaoyao. Du Xiaofu coughed dryly and acted as if nothing had happened. After he finished speaking, he rolled up his sleeves and a surge of energy swept out. Ouyang Shuang, Lu Limo, Hunji, and Huolei Laozu were all wrapped up in it. Then, his figure flashed and he left the area.